Chapter 134. Seeing that Qin Feiyang opened the door and was about to walk out. "I'll bet." Steward Li gritted his teeth, turned to Qin Feiyang and nodded. 200 then. Deal. A businessman should be so straightforward. Qin Feiyang smiled, turned around, and put the furnace and fire ginseng into his Qingkuan bag. "You can be proud." Steward Li rolled his eyes, took out a piece of paper from his arms, and handed it to Qin Feiyang. "Sign it." "What's this?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He took it and looked at it carefully. Suddenly his veins bulged. It was an IOU. The content was, "Today, Jiang Haoqian bought 3 fire ginseng for a total of 450,000 yuan. Because he had no money to pay, he left an IOU." Qin Feiyang looked up at Steward Li and said with a dark face, "Is there a need to do this?" Steward Li said, "Of course. What if you go back on your words? I don't know you very well." "You win." Qin Feiyang glared at him, bit his finger, and directly pressed a fingerprint. Steward Li took the IOU, looked at the fingerprint, and suddenly smiled. "What are you doing? I'm a core disciple of the Danwang Hall. Do I look like someone who will pay a bad debt?" Suddenly, there was a roar from outside. It was Shuiyang. Steward Li raised his eyebrows and said to Qin Feiyang, "I'll go out and take a look." Qin Feiyang also followed curiously, out of the door, turned right, walked a dozen meters and arrived at the reception on the second floor. At this moment, Shuiyang was in a rage. The 4 tall and sturdy men surrounded him in the middle. Their expressions were somewhat awkward. There was also a woman in white, about 25 or 26, explaining something to Shuiyang. "Jiang Haoqian." When Shuiyang noticed Qin Feiyang walking over, his face immediately darkened. "No need to thank me," Qin Feiyang joked. This person was not bad-looking. He was 8 meters tall and handsome, but his IQ was not good. Shuiyang clenched his fists as a sharp light flickered in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Just you wait. I'll let you know what pain feels like. Then I'll wait. Don't disappoint me." Qin Feiyang didn't take it to heart at all. There were many people who threatened him, but who could really do it? He was not even afraid of a battle emperor, let alone a 3-star martial ancestor. Manager Li walked forward and glanced at the 4 guards. He frowned and asked, "What are you doing?" "Manager, you're finally here." As though she had seen her savior, the woman in white hurriedly walked to Manager Li's side and explained, "Shuiyang doesn't have the money to pay, so we don't dare to let him leave." "No money?" Manager Li furrowed his brows and waved his aged hand, indicating for the 4 guards to step back. Subsequently, he walked in front of Shuiyang and said in a deep voice, "You are very clear about the rules of the treasure pavilion. You have already bought the fire ginseng. If you dare to renege on your debt, don't blame me for being ruthless." Shuiyang's gaze trembled as he hurriedly said, "I'm not trying to renege on my debt. It's because I really don't have that much money. Manager Li, can you give me some time?" Manager Li said angrily, "You don't have the money and you're still fighting?" Shuiyang pointed at Qin Feiyang and said, "He doesn't have the money, but isn't he still fighting?" Manager Li said, "He's smarter than you." Shuiyang's eyes immediately turned red as he clenched his fists tightly. Manager Li waved his hand and said, all right, I'll give you 1 day. At this time tomorrow, if you can't hand over 1,200,000, I'll go to the Danwang Hall and ask Old Man He for it." "Thank you, Manager Li." Shuiyang cupped his hands and said, "Go, write an IOU and let him put his fingerprint on it." Manager Li instructed the white-clothed woman beside him, "Go and get someone to prepare 100 sets of healing pills and 100 sets of bone replenishing pills. Send them to me immediately." Manager Li ordered another guard. Then he brought Qin Feiyang and Shi Zhang into the lounge at the side. And throughout the whole process, Shuiyang stared at Qin Feiyang, murderous intent lurking in his eyes. After closing the door, Manager Li walked to the tea table and said, "Please take a seat." Qin Feiyong did not stand on ceremony and sat down on the chair. He looked around the lounge and asked, "Manager Li, where's the chief pavilion master?" Manager Li was making tea. When he heard this, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyong, puzzled. "Why are you asking about him?" Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, "I'm just curious." Manager Li smiled and said, "The chief pavilion master has been in Xingyue City for this period of time." Qin Feiyong said, "For his daughter." "How do you know?" Manager Li was surprised. "I have some friendship with his daughter." Qin Feiyong smiled. Manager Li suddenly understood and did not say anything. He lowered his head and continued to make tea. A short while later, the guard took a Qinkuan bag and entered the lounge. Manager Li said, "Give it to Jiang Haotian." The guard handed it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong grabbed it and stood up, saying, "Since the matter is settled, I won't disturb you anymore. Goodbye." Manager Li nodded and smiled. "Send the pills over as soon as possible. Haven't you heard that being impatient won't let you eat hot tofu?" Qin Feiyong smiled faintly, turned around, and quickly left the treasure pavilion with Shi Zheng. Shi Zheng asked, "Where are we going now?" After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyong said, "Let's find a restaurant to stay in first." Shi Zheng was shocked and hurriedly said, "No, it's too dangerous to stay in a restaurant. Let's go back to the Martial Imperial Hall. It's safer." Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, "Elder One asked you to protect me, not to express your opinion. You have to listen to me now." Shi Zheng frowned. Qin Feiyong sighed inwardly. This person was doing his job diligently, so he should be a bit more polite. He smiled and said, "Elder Shi, I know you're doing this for my sake, but I have my own plans. Can you not interfere?" "All right." Shi Zheng nodded. How could he not agree to it when it had already come to this point? Flying Phoenix Restaurant. This was the most luxurious restaurant in the West District. It had a total of 5 floors and was decorated with carved beams and painted pillars. In the center of the roof, there was a huge stone carving. It was a flaming phoenix, looking down at everyone with a proud expression. It was lifelike. This was the Flying Phoenix Restaurant's totem. Qin Feiyong raised his head and took a glance. Then he walked into the main hall of the restaurant. He immediately attracted the attention of everyone. Shi Zheng glanced at the surrounding diners and frowned slightly. He said in a low voice, "Aren't we too conspicuous by coming here?" Qin Feiyong said, "I want everyone in Swallow City to know that I'm here." "Why is that?" Shi Zheng was puzzled. Qin Feiyong said, "Because I'm waiting for someone." "Waiting for someone?" Shi Zheng was even more puzzled. A waiter greeted them with a flattering smile. "Young Master Jiang, Elder Shi, are you here to stay or have a meal?" Qin Feiyong said, "Staying in. Arrange a slightly more secluded room for me." "No problem. Please follow me." The waiter led them to a corner on the 5th floor. There was a door there. The waiter pushed the door open and said, "Young Master Jiang, this is the quietest room in our Flying Phoenix restaurant. Do you like it?" Qin Feiyong walked in. The room wasn't big, but it had a dining room, a tea room, and a bedroom. It was also very clean. Qin Feiyong nodded. "Not bad, you can leave first." The waiter said, "All right, let me know if you need anything." After the waiter left, Shi Zheng closed the door and looked around the room vigilantly. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "Elder Shi, I'm going to refine pills. If you're bored, you can go down and drink some wine. While you're at it, spread the room number of my room." Shi Zheng was stunned. Qin Feiyong shook his head. "I don't think that's necessary. That waiter will probably spread the news." Shi Zheng looked at him and asked, "There's no alchemy room here. Where are you going to refine pills?" "As long as there's alchemy fire, there's an alchemy room." Qin Feiyong smiled and entered the castle. In any case, everyone already knew that he had a hidden treasure, so there was no need for him to hide anymore. What's this kid's background? Sher Zhang looked around the room, his heart full of disbelief. Wolf King was lying on the floor of the castle, listless, bored, and unmotivated. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear, it immediately got up and said angrily, "Little Qin Zi, when will you let me out to get some fresh air? If this goes on, I'll get sick from holding it in." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, "I wish I could be as carefree as you, cultivating every day, but you're not satisfied. You really don't know how to be content. Get lost. Don't talk to me about these useless things. I want to go out, go out, go out." Wolf King roared in exasperation. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, Okay, when I'm done with my business, I'll find a chance to send you out of the city. Then you can do whatever you want." "That's more like it." Wolf King smiled, changing his attitude faster than flipping a book. "Step aside. I have to prepare to make elixirs." Qin Feiyang said, walked to the altar where the iron book was placed, took out the elixir furnace, and put it next to the iron book. Wolf King was stunned and asked, "What do you mean you're going to make elixirs here? Aren't you afraid that the iron book will be burned?" "I don't think so." Qin Feiyang shook his head and frowned slightly. For safety's sake, he finally took out the chang shui and cut the iron box hard. As a result, there was not even a trace of it. He dripped blood to open the iron box and cut the iron book, but there was also no trace of it. "TSK, TSK, TSK. It's so hard." Wolf King came up, his eyes shining and drooling, and asked, "Do you think it's a divine object?" Qin Feiyang said angrily, "You're drooling on the ground." Wolf King licked his lips and said with a sinister smile, "Why don't we use this box to make an armor for you?" "In your dreams." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. As long as he saw something of value, the white-eyed wolf would want to take it for himself. He didn't know how to describe his character. However, even if the iron box and the iron book were really divine objects, they could only look at them, because he couldn't even move the iron box, let alone use it to make armor. Phew! After letting out a long breath, Qin Feiyang took out the Qinkuan bag that Manager Li gave him, took out a set of medicinal ingredients for the heal pill, and prepared to start refining. To be honest, he was very nervous now. Chapter 135. Don't disturb me when I'm refining pills. Qin Feiyang reminded Wolf King and waved his hand. The nether devil flame flew through the air and floated below the pill furnace. With a thought, the flame rose. The temperature in the castle soared. Wolf King quickly retreated to the back corner. His pupils constricted as he was quite afraid of the nether devil flame. In an instant, the top of the pill furnace was burned red with heat waves. Using one's own pill fire to refine pills and using someone else's pill fire to refine pills were two completely different things. For example, in the pill refining room, Qin Feiyang had to use his mental power to get used to the high temperature of the pill fire and gradually merge with the pill fire before he could control the pill fire. But now, with the nether devil flame, he only needed a thought. This way he could save a lot of time. Buzz! A wave of mental power rushed out from the top of his head, rolled up a medicinal herb, and slowly put it into the pill furnace. However, just as it was put into the pill furnace, with a burst of black smoke, the medicinal herb turned into ashes on the spot. What's going on? Qin Feiyang frowned. He had refined the healing pill more than 100 times. His control of the pill fire was not superb, but it was definitely not wrong. He even remembered clearly that the first medicinal herb of the healing pill needed to be at 30%. Now, he had indeed controlled it at 30%. But how did the medicinal herb turn into ashes? He suspiciously put his hand into the pill furnace and retracted it like lightning. He said in surprise, "Why is the temperature inside the pill furnace so high?" After thinking for a while, he suddenly realized it must be because the level of the two pill fires was different. Without a doubt, the level of the nether devil flame was definitely higher than the pill fire of the pill hall. There was naturally a difference in temperature between the two. So, he had to adjust the flame again. He figured this out. Qin Feiyong had a thought and controlled the pill fire at 20%. The medicinal herb turned into ashes again. Controlling it at 10%, the medicinal herb still turned into ashes in the end. Not even 10%. Qin Feiyong was stunned. The level of the nether devil flame was so high that it was beyond his expectations. Then, he controlled the flame at 5%. This time, he finally succeeded in refining the spiritual liquid. The first medicinal ingredient originally required 30% of the fire, but now it only requires 5%. The second medicinal ingredient originally required 40% maturity. Is it only 10% now? After a series of experiments, this was indeed the case. Next, he let go of his courage and began to refine the spirit liquid. The third medicinal ingredient, 10% of the fire. The fourth ingredient, 15% maturity. Very soon, 8 drops of spirit liquid were extracted. The last 2 steps were to fuse the 8 types of spirit liquids and then add the solidifying liquid to form the pill. He did it all in one go without any delay. After the pills were refined, Qin Feiyong could not wait to grab it. He opened his eyes wide and looked at it carefully. Immediately, his body shook and a bright light burst out from his eyes. On the surface of the recovery pill, there was a circle of pill inscriptions. Not only were they clear and distinct, they were even emitting wisps of light. It felt as if a halo had been added to the pill. This was a true top-grade medicinal pill. Qin Feiyong was extremely excited. Alchemy fire was indeed the key to affecting the quality of the pill. Without the nether devil fire, he would definitely not be able to refine such a perfect top-grade pill. Right now, he was fully deserving of the title of a top-grade alchemist. I can't be complacent. The top-grade pill is not the end. I have to continue working hard. He muttered to himself. After calming down, he began to refine the bone, replenishing pill. Time flew. 2 days later, late at night, a round figure sneakily climbed in through the window. It was Fatso. When he did not see Qin Feiyong in the room, he whispered, "Jiang Lauda, Fat Lord is here. Come out quickly." Whoosh! Qin Feiyong immediately appeared out of thin air and said with a smile, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Waiting for me? Fatso was stunned. How would I dare to go to the Danwang Hall to look for you now? Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. He was afraid that he would be captured alive before entering the Danwang Hall. Therefore, he lived in such a conspicuous place and let everyone in the city know that he was here. If Fatso had something to do with him, he would naturally come here. Fatso pondered carefully and understood Qin Feiyong's motive. He sighed, "This is too troublesome. We have to get a few image crystals as soon as possible." Qin Feiyong said, "Are you kidding? The image crystals are so expensive. Are you going to pay for it?" Fatso laughed. "Even if you sell Fat Lord, you won't be able to get so many gold coins. So, Jiang Lauda, you have to think of a way to get these image crystals." Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. He glanced around the room and asked doubtfully, "Where's Shizhang?" "He's drinking alone downstairs." Fatso pointed downstairs. Qin Feiyong said he didn't see it. "It's best. How is it? Did you get the herbs?" He was waiting for Fatso here because he was waiting for the herbs. "Is there anything that Fat Lord can't do?" Fatso glared at him unhappily. He took out a Qinquan bag and threw it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong grabbed the Qinquan bag with one hand and Fatso with the other. The next moment, they appeared in the castle. "Hi, Brother Wolf." Upon seeing the Wolf King, Fatty immediately extended his hand to greet him warmly. "Your meat should be very fragrant." Brother Wolf hasn't eaten meat for a few months. Wolf King opened his bloody mouth and stared at him with evil intentions. Before it could finish, Fatso shivered and hid behind Qin Feiyang like a frightened piglet. Useless. Wolf King looked at him with disdain, then lowered his head and continued to sleep. Qin Feiyang took out the medicinal herbs and counted them one by one. No more, no less. Just 3 of each kind. Next, as he sorted out the medicinal herbs, he said, "Fatso, let me ask you a question." Fatso said, "Ask away." Qin Feiyang said, "Do you already know my true identity?" Fatso chuckled. "Then tell Fat Lord, who is your true identity?" Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "You're not even the least bit surprised. It seems like it's as I expected. Fatso, since you know that I'm Qin Feiyang, why are you still so close to me?" "What? You're Qin Feiyang?" The fatty looked at him in shock and disbelief, his eyes and mouth wide open. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at Fatso and said, "If you continue to pretend, I'll let the white-eyed wolf eat you." Elo. Wolf King was also very cooperative, baring his teeth and growling repeatedly. Fatso shrunk his neck and hurriedly said, "Yes, yes, yes. Fat Lord indeed knew that you were Qin Feiyang a long time ago. The reason why he is still so close to you is because he guessed that your background is not small. He wants to take advantage of you and take advantage of you. This shouldn't be a big deal, right?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. "That's nothing. You're right, my background is not small." Fatso asked curiously, "Then what is your background?" Qin Feiyang said, "If I tell you now, I'll kill you later. Do you still want to know?" "Then forget it." Fatso quickly waved his hand. "Prepare the bamboo slip. I'll give you 2 perfect martial skills later. Don't disturb me now." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he put away the pills, stood up and walked to the front of the pill furnace. He held his breath and prepared to refine the scarlet-colored glass pill. The scarlet-colored glass pill was not a heal pill or a bone-continuing pill. The medicinal ingredients for the heal pill and the bone-continuing pill were very common and cheap. They could be bought again if they were scrapped. However, the medicinal ingredients for the scarlet-colored glass pill were all very rare. If they were accidentally scrapped, they would have to spend a lot of effort to find them, especially the leaves of the fire ginseng and the scarlet-colored glass tree. There must not be any accidents. Moreover, this was also his first time refining the scarlet-colored glass pill, so in his heart he was more or less nervous. At this moment, Fatso's heart was completely filled with ecstasy. Jiang Laoda, no, it was Boss Qin. He actually wanted to give him a perfect martial skill. Wasn't this surprise a little too fast? He was a little dizzy now. It felt like a dream. "You are as useless as Ling Yunfei." Isn't it just 2 perfect martial skills? Is there a need to be so excited? Wolf King's contemptuous words suddenly sounded in Fatso's mind. Fatso suddenly glared and turned his head to Wolf King, ready to shout. But suddenly he remembered that Qin Feiyang was refining pills. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were swallowed back. He proudly laughed in a low voice. "Fat Lord is willing. What can you do?" "TSK." Wolf King's eyes were full of disdain, and he continued to close his eyes and nap. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also moved. Full concentration. There were a total of 9 kinds of medicinal ingredients for the scarlet-colored glass pill. When refining the spiritual liquid of these 9 medicinal ingredients, he would first control the heat to the minimum and then gradually increase it. I didn't expect Boss Qin to really have the leaves of the scarlet-colored glass tree. Fatso secretly muttered and also calmed down, carefully observing the process of Qin Feiyang refining pills. At this moment, in the ancient castle, there was a dead silence without the slightest noise. Hundreds of breaths passed, except for the leaves of the scarlet-colored glass tree and the fire ginseng. The spiritual liquid of the other 7 medicinal ingredients had been refined, emitting a rich medicinal fragrance. And now he was even more careful, concentrating his mental force. He did not dare to be distracted. Another 100 breaths passed. The spiritual liquid of the fire ginseng was also refined. He began to refine the leaves of the scarlet-colored glass tree again. After the leaves entered the pill furnace, he controlled the netherworld devil flame and increased the heat step by step. Suddenly, as if the heat was too strong, the leaves quickly withered. However, no spiritual liquid appeared. Qin Feiyang's face changed and hurriedly took out the leaves. Seeing that the leaves were not burned, he breathed a sigh of relief. After the temperature of the pill furnace dropped, he carefully put the leaves in again. This time, his control of the alchemy fire was more precise than before, and the heat was almost increasing bit by bit. Dozens of breaths later, the spiritual liquid was finally refined without any danger. But now was not the time to relax. There were still the last 2 steps. There must be no mistakes. Qin Feiyang looked at the 9 drops of spiritual liquid in the pill furnace, trying to relax his body and mind. Because at this time, the more nervous he was, the easier it was to make mistakes. After a long while, he began to fuse the 9 drops of spiritual liquid. Every movement was very gentle. This was a test of a person's control and patience. The slightest mistake would cause the whole thing to collapse. Gradually, the 9 drops of spiritual liquid blended together and were indistinguishable from each other, blooming with rays of light, as if a treasure was about to be born. The last step. Qin Feiyang controlled his mental force, rolled up a drop of solidifying liquid, and carefully integrated it into the spiritual liquid. Soon, the scarlet-colored glass pill was formed. The rays of light converged, revealing a pill the size of a pellet. It was fiery red all over, as if there were wisps of small flames on the surface. An intoxicating medicinal fragrance, like a tide, instantly swept every inch of the ancient castle. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the scarlet-colored glass pill flew out of the pill furnace and caught it in his palm. Chapter 136. At once, Wolf King and Fatso ran over and surrounded Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang quivered, stared at Wolf King vigilantly, and shouted, "White-eyed wolf, I warn you, you have already taken one, and it will be a waste if you take another one. Don't snatch it again." Wolf King said disdainfully, "Brother Wolf knows, you don't need to remind me. Brother Wolf just wants to see what the best red glass pill looks like. You'd better not snatch it, otherwise don't blame me for risking my life with you." Qin Feiyang still didn't trust Wolf King. His eyes were firmly fixed on it, and he slowly spread out his hands. The red fire-colored glass pill appeared. Looking at the dazzling pill pattern, Fatso's saliva flowed out. He looked at Qin Feiyang with shifty eyes. Seeing Qin Feiyang, he only guarded against Wolf King. He stretched out his claws like lightning, grabbed the pill, and threw it into his mouth before Qin Feiyang could react. Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Waha, serves you right." Wolf King was also stunned, and then he laughed gloatingly, tears coming out of his eyes. "Damn Fatso, I'm going to strangle you." Qin Feiyang was furious. He suddenly turned around, stretched out his hands, and tightly grabbed Fatso's neck. The last time he got a red glass pill, it was snatched by Wolf King. Now he had painstakingly refined one, but it was snatched by Fatso. This was intolerable. Qin Feiyang roared, "Bastard, spit it out for me." "Woo woo!" Fatso struggled desperately, his hands waving wildly, and his face had turned pale. Seeing this, Wolf King hurriedly said, "Little Qinzi, if you don't let go, he will really die. Anyway, he's just a shameless person. So what if he dies?" Qin Feiyang's eyes glinted coldly. This Wolf King was extremely anxious. "Woo woo!" Fatso grabbed Qin Feiyang's hands with a pleading look in his eyes. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows slightly and finally released his hand. Bang! Fatso fell to the ground and greedily breathed in the fresh air. His face was also filled with fear. Just now, he truly felt that the god of death had descended upon him. If Qin Feiyong had let go a second later, he would have died. Boss Qin, I have parents and children to take care of. I can't die. It's my fault. My hands are cheap. Hit me, scold me. You know what? I lost my parents when I was young. I was all alone and lived in despair every day. Boss Qin, it wasn't easy for me to get to where I am today. Do you have the heart to kill me? In order to help you steal the medicinal materials, I was almost discovered by the deacon elder. I risked my life to help you. Please be magnanimous and forgive me. After coming to his senses, Fatso immediately hugged Qin Feiyong's thigh, crying and complaining with snot and tears. Qin Feiyong's face twitched. Damn, Fatso, can you be more ridiculous? Wolf King despised him. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth, Fatso said angrily. Then tell Brother Wolf, you lost your parents when you were young and you didn't get married. Where did the old one above and the young one below come from? Did they jump out of a stone? Wolf King despised him. Fatso said, This, Qin Feiyong shouted. Okay, don't curse your parents. I'll let it go this time, but if there's a next time, I'll skin you alive. Thank you, Boss Qin. Fatso shed tears of gratitude and got up to wipe away his tears. Actually, I didn't curse my parents. They are really dead. When I was 12 years old, a fierce beast suddenly attacked the village. My parents were the only martial artists in the village. But that fierce beast was too strong. They paid the price with their lives to kill it. Since then, I have been an orphan. I relied on the help of the villagers to live to this day. Fatso said. The grief on his face could not be concealed. So pitiful, Wolf King muttered. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, Okay, I forgive you. Thank you, boss. Fatso laughed. Boom! Before his voice died away, a powerful aura rushed out from his body. 5-star martial master. Qin Feiyong was surprised. Fat Lord's talent is not bad. In these years he has also cultivated to 4-star martial master, however. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, an even stronger aura rushed out from his body. 6-star martial master. He actually broke through 2 small realms in a row. Qin Feiyong and Wolf King were dumbfounded. How could this be? Fatso himself was also very surprised. He broke through from 4-star martial master to 6-star martial master in an instant. Was this a dream? I understand now. It's because the power of the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir that Fatso broke through continuously. Qin Feiyong was ecstatic. He did not expect that there would be such a good thing. If he took the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir, would he directly step into 8-star martial master? When he copied the 6th stroke of the Huan character formula, he would be a 9-star martial master. He was only 1 step away from martial grandmaster. Thinking about it made him excited. Oh my God! At that time, why did Brother Wolf snatch that red fire glaze elixir? Wolf King suddenly howled. At that time, when he snatched the red fire glaze elixir, he was so proud that he even farted. But now, seeing the power of the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir, his intestines were green with regret. Why, God, Brother Wolf is so kind and innocent. How can you bear to treat Brother Wolf like this? Don't stop, Brother Wolf. Brother Wolf is going to hit the wall. Wolf King crashed into the stone wall. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes and turned to look at Qin Feiyong and Fatso. Qin Feiyong crossed his arms in front of his chest, his eyes full of ridicule. Fatso also had a look of disdain. Wolf King said angrily, You guys really don't stop me. Do you want Brother Wolf to die in front of you? Qin Feiyong waved his hand and said, Go ahead, for the sake of friends. I will collect your corpse, and I will also be free. Wolf King bared his teeth and roared, Bastard, you want to be free? No way. Brother Wolf will pester you for the rest of your life, making you unable to eat, unable to sleep, and restless. Scoundrel. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. However, seeing the white-eyed wolf regretting so much that he wanted to hit the wall, he felt quite good in his heart. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth lifted, and he said playfully, "What do you think if Elder Juan and Manager Lee know the power of the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir? What kind of expression will they have?" "Haha," Wolf King laughed and said, "It will definitely be like eating feces." Qin Feiyang sneered and said, 2 days ago I wanted to refine, but they didn't give me the medicinal materials. Now, even if they send the medicinal materials to me, it will depend on my mood." "Waha! This is a good opportunity to extort." "Hee, not to mention them. Once this news spreads, all the big shots in Yen City will think of ways to beg you, and the Danwon Hall, when the time comes, their expressions will definitely be very interesting." Wolf King and Fatso laughed sinisterly. "Okay, you go and spread this news immediately. I want this night to be completely boiling." Qin Feiyang's eyes burst with light. "No problem." Fatso patted his chest and promised. After sending Fatso out, Qin Feiyang calmed down and continued to refine the red fire glaze elixir. Fatso's efficiency was also extremely fast. Half an hour later, the news spread like wildfire in all the restaurants in the Western District. At first, everyone had a look of disbelief. How was this possible? But when they thought of the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir, it might really be possible. So, everyone rushed to the Flying Phoenix house to find out. Treasure Pavilion. Manager Lee was already resting. Dong dong. Suddenly, a series of rapid knocks on the door woke him up from his sleep. He got up, looked up at the door, and said angrily, "Who is it?" "Manager, something bad has happened." An anxious voice could be heard. Manager Lee was shocked and hurriedly said, "What's the matter? Come in and tell me." A guard opened the door and ran in, saying, "Manager, there's a crazy rumor outside, saying that the supreme grade red fire glaze elixir refined by Jiang Haoyan can help people break through 2 small realms." "That's utter nonsense." Manager Lee snorted coldly. "What a bunch of idiots to believe such a ridiculous thing." The guard said, "Manager, although it's a little unbelievable, we've never seen a supreme grade red fire glaze elixir. What if it's true?" Manager Lee frowned, his old eyes flashing, and nodded. "You're right. This matter can't be groundless. Do you know where Jiang Haoyan is now?" The guard said, "He has been in the Flying Phoenix house for the past 2 days and has never appeared." Manager Lee asked, "Then who is the person who spread the news?" The guard said, "It's said to be a fatso, but no one knows his name." "All right, you go outside and watch. I'll make a trip to the Flying Phoenix house, personally. If this news is true, then Jiang Haoyan is a priceless treasure to our precious treasure pavilion." Manager Lee grabbed the coat on the hanger and hurriedly walked out. At this moment, a large group of people rushed into the Flying Phoenix house. The waiter of the restaurant was confused. Shi Zheng, who was drinking alone, was also extremely surprised. "Shi Zheng is there. Elder Shi, can you let us see Jiang Haoyan? We have a lot of questions to ask him." As soon as they saw Shi Zheng, everyone crowded around him, all talking at once, asking questions nonstop. "What's going on?" Shi Zheng looked at them suspiciously, somewhat baffled. "Elder Shi, you're hiding it. The supreme grade red fire glaze elixir refined by Jiang Haoyan can raise one's cultivation by 2 small realms. Let us see him." The few people standing at the front pleaded. When Shi Zheng heard this, he suddenly stood up, his face full of disbelief. "Wait, I'll go up and ask." After saying this, he leaped like an ape and landed on the corridor of the 5th floor with a few leaps. The crowd in the lobby immediately rushed to the 5th floor. Shi Zheng ran into the room and closed the door. There was a faint fragrance of tea in the room. Qin Feiyang was sitting in the tea room, leisurely drinking tea, looking incomparably comfortable. As for the other 2 supreme grade red fire glaze elixirs, he had already refined them. After all, it had been an hour since then. Shi Zheng strode into the tea room and asked Qin Feiyang, "What's the news outside about?" It spread so quickly? Qin Feiyang was rather surprised. He had never doubted Fatso's ability to do things, but wasn't this efficiency too shocking? Chapter 137. Shi Zheng urged, "What the hell is going on? Tell me." "What news?" Qin Feiyang pretended to be confused. "It's the best red fireglass pill. It's said that the red fireglass pill you refined can break through 2 small realms. Is that true?" Shi Zheng looked at him nervously. "Is that true? Who's talking nonsense?" Qin Feiyang frowned and looked very angry. "No such thing?" Shi Zheng asked, half doubtful and half believing. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips and smiled, saying, "Of course there is." "That's good." Shi Zheng breathed a sigh of relief. If it was true, it would be too incredible. But then, his body shook, and he stared at Qin Feiyang in surprise and asked, "What did you say? There is?" "Yes, is that strange?" Qin Feiyang took out a jade box and opened the lid. A fiery red elixir appeared. Shi Zheng looked down. When he saw the dazzling elixir pattern, his heart was full of shock. The best elixir pattern. He must have seen a lot of elixirs, but it was the first time he saw the best elixir. Bang! At this moment, the door was knocked open, and a white-haired old man walked in anxiously. It was Manager Li. As soon as he entered the tea room, he asked anxiously, "Jiang Haoqian, is the news outside true?" Before he finished speaking, wisps of strong medicinal fragrance came to his nose. He looked down, and his old eyes lit up. He immediately rushed to the tea table and stared at the elixir in the jade box. This was the best red fireglass pill. He reached out his hand excitedly and was about to touch the elixir. Qin Feiyang closed the lid of the box, put his big hand on the jade box, and joked, "The price is clearly marked 100,000 gold coins per touch. Take out the gold coins first." 100,000 gold coins per touch? Shi Zheng's face twitched. This kid really knew how to ask for a lion's share. Manager Li was stunned, and a trace of disdain climbed up on his old face. He got up and tidied his clothes, saying disdainfully, "Isn't it just the best elixir? What's the big deal?" Qin Feiyang said, "If that's the case, Elder Shi, please help me see the guests out." Shi Zheng turned to look at Manager Li and said with a smile, "Please." Ugh! Steward Li was startled. Then he raged, "Brat, don't go too far. You're here in the middle of the night, disturbing my rest, and saying that I'm going overboard? Do you have any shame?" Qin Feiyang spoke in disdain. "Rest?" Manager Li was stunned and said angrily, "Drinking tea while resting? It's my pleasure. What can you do about it? I'm not going to waste my breath on you. If you want to know the power of the supreme grade crimson fire colored glass pill, then sit down obediently. When everyone is here, the truth will naturally be revealed." Qin Feiyang said lightly. Manager Li frowned and looked inquiringly at Shi Zheng. Shi Zheng spread out his hands and shrugged, indicating that he didn't know either. Helpless. Manager Li could only sit on the chair and look at the jade box on the tea table, his brows tightly knitted together. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Elder Shi, help me go out and tell everyone not to rush and wait patiently." "Okay." Shi Zheng nodded and turned to leave the room. Qin Feiyang picked up the teapot and said with a smile, "Manager Li, this tea is not bad. Do you want to have a cup?" Manager Li said expressionlessly, "I'm afraid that if I drink too much, I won't be able to sleep later." "If you don't drink, you won't be able to sleep later." Qin Feiyang smiled playfully, holding the teacup and drinking by himself. "Bastard!" Manager Li cursed secretly. To him, this was a torment. "Greetings, Lord Lin Han." "Greetings, Your Highness." About a few hundred breaths later, outside, there was a series of respectful greetings. "Lin Han." Qin Feiyang's arm paused slightly, and a cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Shi Zheng raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you want to let them in?" One represents the Lin family. The other represents the royal family. Of course. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Shi Zheng walked over and opened the door. After a while, Lin Han and a young man in a golden robe entered the room, one after another. Lin Han smiled and said, "Little brother, we meet again." Qin Feiyang didn't get up to greet them. He nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, Yen City is really small. Patriarch Lin, First Prince, please have a seat." After the two of them sat down, they looked at Steward Li and frowned. The First Prince's eyes flashed, and he turned to Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "I've heard of your name a long time ago, but I haven't had the chance to visit you. If you don't mind, let's have a few drinks later?" "Your Highness, I'm sorry, but I rarely drink wine. Tea is fine." Qin Feiyang smiled, poured 2 cups of tea, and handed them over. "Ha! I didn't expect Brother Jiang to be a refined person." The First Prince smiled and took the teacup. He didn't look unhappy at all, but no one knew what he was thinking. Lin Han took a sip of the tea and put it on the table in front of him. He said in confusion, "Little brother, the news outside," but before he could finish, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Patriarch Lin, being impatient won't help you. Please wait patiently for a while." Okay. Lin Han nodded and smiled, but there was a flash of displeasure in his eyes. Shi Zheng looked at the scene in silence. He couldn't believe it. One had to know. Whether it was Manager Li, Lin Han, or the First Prince, they all represented powerful forces and held high positions. Any decision they made could change the situation in Yen City. But at this moment, in the face of these big shots, this young man wasn't nervous at all. He was calm and at ease. Even he couldn't compare to this kind of temperament. He couldn't understand how a young man under the age of 16 could do this. "Greetings, Elder Wan." "Greetings, Elder Ji." Soon, another wave of respectful greetings came from outside. "Elder Ji?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and confused. Why hadn't he heard of this person? Shi Zheng quickly went to greet them. Soon, Shi Zheng led 2 people into the room. It was Elder Wan and the beautiful woman. Seeing that Manager Li, Lin Han, and the First Prince were all there, the beautiful woman frowned and snorted. "How lively!" The First Prince got up and saluted. "Greetings, Elder Ji." The beautiful woman responded faintly. "So her surname is Ji." Qin Feiyang mumbled. Elder Wan looked at Qin Feiyang and frowned. "Jiang Haoyan, what are you doing?" He was obviously blaming Qin Feiyang for making such a big scene. "What am I doing?" Qin Feiyang put down the teacup and said, "Of course, I want you to witness a miracle." The people from the Danwang Hall definitely wouldn't be there. Most of the big shots in Yen City were already there. So, it was time to uncover the mystery. He opened the lid. A strong medicinal fragrance spread out like a tide. They're more than just elixir patterns. The elixir patterns are still shining. At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on the elixir and their faces were full of shock. Qin Feiyang took out the elixir and said with a faint smile, "Don't you want to know the power of this elixir? Now I'll let you see it with your own eyes." After saying that, he threw the elixir into his mouth without hesitation. Everyone stared at Qin Feiyang. The entire room fell into a dead silence. Everyone's heart was beating faster. If the rumors were true, then this person's value in the entire Yen County would be unmatched. More than 10 breaths later, boom! Qin Feiyang's body trembled and a powerful aura broke out of his body. 7-star martial master. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They were getting more and more nervous. Even his breathing had become hurried. Boom! 3 breaths passed. Another stronger aura rushed out of Qin Feiyang's body and rolled up a gust of wind. At the same time, everyone at the scene clenched their fists, and their eyes shone brightly. It was true. The supreme grade crimson fire glaze elixir could really break through 2 small realms. This was too crazy. The thirst in their hearts was completely exposed, without a trace left behind. One had to know. Everyone could only take the crimson fire glaze elixir once in their life. Therefore, increasing 1 small realm and increasing 2 small realms were 2 completely different concepts. It was not an exaggeration to say that it could no longer be measured by money. Lin Han was the first to react and poked the eldest prince's back. The eldest prince suddenly came back to his senses and immediately said, "John Haoqian, now in the name of the royal family, I officially invite you to be the royal alchemist. No matter what the conditions are, I will agree." Manager Li hurriedly said, "In the name of the Precious Treasures Pavilion, I invite you to be the exclusive alchemist of the Precious Treasures Pavilion. I won't restrict your freedom, and I'll be responsible for pill recipes, pill furnaces, medicinal ingredients, and your future cultivation resources." Both forces had offered such tempting conditions. Elder Wan and the beautiful woman were anxious. What a joke! This was a treasure. How could they give it to others? The beautiful woman smiled and said, "Haoqian, we have an agreement. You can't go back on your words." The agreement didn't say that I can't help others refine elixirs. Besides, the conditions they offered are many times better than the conditions you offered. I have no reason to reject them. Besides, back then, I was thick-skinned and said that I would help you refine the crimson fire glaze elixir. You thought that the reward I asked for was too high and were unwilling to refine it for me. Now that you see the power of the supreme grade crimson fire glaze elixir, you want me to help refine it? How can there be such a cheap thing in the world? Let me tell you, my heart is very fragile. Now it has been hurt by you." Qin Feiyang said lightly. Elder Wan and the beautiful woman looked at each other, their hearts bitter. If they had known that the power of the supreme grade crimson fire glaze elixir was so terrifying, how could they refuse? Qin Feiyang's gaze turned and looked at Manager Li mockingly. Manager Li smiled bitterly and said, "All right, you don't have to say any more. I know I was wrong. I'll apologize to you, okay?" Qin Feiyang said, "Tisk, if an apology is useful, what's the use of the law?" This Manager Li scratched his head and suddenly said with a smile, "Those 3 stalks of fire ginseng, I'll give to you. It's free." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, No, how can I do that? It's right and proper to repay debts. I don't want people to talk behind my back and say that I'm a villain who reneges on debts. No such thing, I'm willing. Chapter 138. Qin Feiyang was quite happy to have picked up 3 blazing ginseng for free, but he didn't show it. He still had a face full of displeasure. This made Steward Li feel very regretful and nervous. Elder Wan walked to Qin Feiyang with a smile on his face and said meaningfully, "Haoqian, when you left the Danwang Hall, you wanted to use the Martial Imperial Hall to embarrass the Danwang Hall. Not only did we not mind, we even took the initiative to help you." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Senior, you're mistaken. You're helping me because the value I've displayed has moved you." Ah, Elder Wan was stunned, and his face became extremely interesting. Yes. That's indeed the case, but at least we helped you. Look at the treasure pavilion and the royal family, who will stand up for you. They're all laughing at you. This is the difference between the Martial Imperial Hall and them. You're a smart and sensible child. You can definitely see who's the most reliable person. As soon as Elder One finished speaking, Steward Li and the first prince looked at him with dissatisfaction. Steward Li said, "Old Wan, it's your fault for sowing discord." The first prince echoed, "Yes, Senior Wan, we didn't slander the Martial Imperial Hall like that. You're a person of virtue and prestige, so you should be more righteous." Elder One was now very embarrassed. He had lost all his face and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Steward Li smiled. "Haoqian, I'll agree to your condition now. Help me refine 10 blazing colored glass pellets, and I'll give you 3 as a reward. That's a 30-70 split. Qin Feiyong didn't say anything. The first prince's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, Brother Jiang, a 30-70 split is too insincere. The royal family is willing to split 40-60. How about it? Steward Li was dumbfounded and said angrily, Stinking brat, are you deliberately undermining me? The first prince said, Since Elder One has already started, let's rely on our own abilities. Steward Li was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. The situation is getting worse, the beautiful woman mumbled. She looked at Qin Feiyong and smiled. Hao Tian, Elder Wan and I were in the wrong before. How about this? I'll agree to split it 50-50. What? 50-50? Steward Li, the first prince, and Lin Han all stared at the beautiful woman in disbelief. The Martial Imperial Hall was truly willing to pay a heavy price. Zhanbao Pavilion is also willing to split the profits 50-50. The royal family agrees as well. Steward Li and the first prince gritted their teeth and said, they were all smart people. They knew that if they continued to fight like this, there would definitely be no result. Therefore, he might as well agree to the conditions and let Qin Feiyong make the choice. And now, no matter what choice Qin Feiyong made, he would definitely offend someone. This point, he himself was also very clear. However, he wouldn't be so stupid as to make such a stupid choice. He glanced at them and pretended to be in a difficult position, unable to make a decision. In the end, he sighed deeply and said, I can't afford to offend all of you, so I can only decide to help all of you, but the conditions can't be changed. 50-50. This was his real goal. It was impossible for him to help only one faction and abandon the other two. As long as he had all 3 forces in his hands, he could maximize his benefits. Hearing this, Elder Wan and the others fell silent. Everyone was selfish. They didn't want to share good things with others. But after thinking for a long time, they found a problem. This matter didn't seem to be something they could control. Forcefully take this kid away. Not to mention this kid himself, the other 2 forces wouldn't let it go. Coercion was even more impossible. This kid was now in high demand. If you coerced him, others would protect him. In the end, you would offend this kid instead. The gains didn't make up for the losses. After thinking about it, they came to a conclusion. This kid looked arrogant on the surface, but he was actually a little fox. Everything had been planned out by him. Qin Feiyong glanced at them and said with a smile, If you can't make a decision now, go back and think about it. No need, I agree. The beautiful woman said, We agree too. Steward Li and the first prince nodded. Elder Wan smiled and said, Hao Tian, living in the Flying Phoenix house is not a long-term plan. Come back with us. The first prince said, Brother Jiang, why don't you come with me to the palace? I will definitely arrange the quietest and most suitable place for you to refine pills. Elder One raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Children shouldn't interrupt when adults are talking. The first prince's face twitched. Had he ever seen a 20-year-old child? Your Highness, I have an agreement with the Martial Imperial Hall, so I appreciate your kindness. Qin Feiyong smiled. In fact, this was all an excuse. The real reason was that the system of the palace was the same as the one in the imperial capital. And this system, he was now a little conflicted. There was another factor. The fact that the royal family was colluding with the Lin family made him feel disgusted. The first prince nodded and said, All right then, the doors of the palace are always open for you. I still have some matters to attend to, so I will take my leave. I won't see you out. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands. Lin Han smiled and said, I will also take my leave. Little brother, remember to visit the Lin family when you have time. I will definitely visit. Qin Feiyong smiled. Then I'll be waiting for you at home. Lin Han was secretly delighted. As long as this kid entered the Lin family, he would have a way to bribe him. At that time, the Lin family's status in Swallow City would definitely rise. Qin Feiyang would definitely scoff at this idea if he knew about it. After the first prince and Lin Han left, Steward Li chatted with Qin Feiyang for a while before leaving. Qin Feiyang also gave him the 100 healing pills and 100 bone replenishing pills that he had refined. The beautiful woman smiled and said, "Let's go back too." Qin Feiyang took out a jade box and handed it to the beautiful woman, saying, "Elder Ji, I still have some matters to attend to, so I can't go back now. Please pass this to Ling Yunfei." The beautiful woman frowned and said, "What is it? Do you need our help?" "It's nothing. You can go back. Elder's shirt is enough." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "All right." The beautiful woman nodded and said to Shizheng, "No matter what, keep him safe." "Yes." Shizheng bowed and replied. The beautiful woman took the jade box and put it in her Qingquan pouch without looking at it. She then turned around and left with Elder Wan. After Shizheng closed the door, he gave Qin Feiyang a thumbs up and praised, "You're the smartest person I've ever seen among the young people. You're amazing." "Phew." Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and shook his head with a smile. "Elder, you are too kind. I am just a little luckier than others." "Luckier?" Shizheng shook his head and asked, "Where are we going next?" "Which district is the Lin family in?" Qin Feiyang asked instead of answering. "East District," Shizheng said. "Okay, let's take a rest first. After dawn, we will go to the East District." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He entered the castle and continued to copy the Huan formula. Danwang Hall. Conference Hall. Elder, he and Jia He lowered their heads, their faces uncertain. Soon, a deacon elder ran into the hall in a hurry. Elder, he hurriedly looked up at the deacon elder and asked, "Did you find out?" "Yes." The deacon elder nodded and said solemnly, "Although I didn't see Jiang Haoyan in the Flying Phoenix Pavilion, Lin Han and the first prince told us that they saw Jiang Haoqin consume a supreme grade crimson flame, colored glass pellet, and break through 2 minor realms in a row." Hearing this, Elder He's body trembled. Deep in his heart, a wave of regret that could not be dispersed emerged like a tide and drowned his heart. Jia Hei's face became extremely ugly. After a while, "Elder," he said to the deacon elder, "you can leave." "All right, go find Situ Tianyu and ask him to come over." "Yes." The deacon elder bowed and retreated. "Old man Jia, this is what we've done. If we weren't blinded by greed and forced him to hand over the nether devil flame, he would have—" Speaking of this, Elder, he couldn't continue. All the words, all the regret, turned into a helpless sigh. "This little bastard can't be left alive." Jia He cursed. A cold light flashed in his old eyes. After a while, Fatso came to the conference hall and bowed. "Disciple greets the 2 elders." "Elder," he said, "I heard that you were the one who spread the news." Fatso's eyes flashed slightly and he nodded. "It was Disciple who spread it." "Why are you helping him?" Elder, he frowned. "Fuck, whether to help Boss Qin or not. It's Fat Lord's freedom. It's none of your business." Fatty cursed in his heart as he bowed. "Although he left the Pill Emperor Hall, he is still my friend. Not only that, he even gave me a peak-grade crimson flame glazed pellet." "What?" The 2 of them were shocked. Jia He hurriedly said, "Let me see that pill." Fatso said, "Disciple has already taken it." "Taken it?" Jia He was stunned and immediately flew into a rage. He roared in exasperation, "Trash like you. You deserve to take the top-grade Scarlet Fire glass pill." That look was extremely contemptuous. Fatso was furious in his heart. This was given to him by Qin Feiyang. Why couldn't he take it? And he even called him trash? That was too much. Damn, old dog, just wait for Fat Lord. Sooner or later, you will cry. Elder, he furrowed his brows and shouted, "Old Jia, Watch your behavior. Humph! Such a good top-grade scarlet fireglass pill was ruined by a pig. How hateful! Jia snorted coldly, and his strong, insulting words were even more undisguised. Fatso stopped in his ears, but anger was in his heart. At this moment, in his mind, a crazy idea sprouted. Can you stop talking? Elder, he glared fiercely at Jia, turned to Fatso and said, since you are so familiar with Zhang Haoyan, this elder will give you a task. Go and persuade him to come back. Once this matter is done, this elder will make an exception and promote you to a core disciple. Really? Fatso's eyes widened. Of course it's true. Elder, he nodded. Well, leave it to me. Fatso was wild with joy, patting his chest and making a solemn vow. Then it's settled. You can go. Elder, he waved his hand and said. Disciple will take his leave. Fatso bowed and turned around. His eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. Fat Lord himself doesn't want to stay in this rubbish place. You want Fat Lord to persuade Boss Chin? Dream on. You two old farts, wait and see. Soon you will know that Fat Lord is not to be trifled with. Chapter 139. At the same time, Martial Imperial Hall, Conference Hall. Ling Yunfei stood in front of Elder Wan and the beautiful woman, looking at the jade box in his hand. He was so excited that his hands were trembling, and his face was full of gratitude. This was the jade box that Qin Feiyang asked the beautiful woman to give him. There was a top-grade red fireglass pill inside. The beautiful woman said, Yunfei, Zhang Haoyan is very vigilant. It's hard for people to really get close to him. It's even harder to become his friend. So you must maintain this relationship. I understand. Ling Yunfei nodded. Yes. The beautiful woman nodded and smiled. It won't be long before you break through to a 6-star martial master. So it's best to use this top-grade red fireglass pill after you break through. At that time, you can enter the 8-star martial master realm in one go. Ling Yunfei said, I also plan to do so. Then you can leave. The beautiful woman waved her hand and smiled. I'll take my leave. Ling Yunfei bowed and left. The beautiful woman retracted her gaze and turned to Elder Wan, puzzled. Elder Wan, why didn't you say a word? Elder Wan frowned. I'm thinking about how to let Zhang Haoyan truly integrate into our martial imperial hall. The beautiful woman said, You'd better get rid of this idea as soon as possible. Elder One thought for a moment, nodded and sighed. That's true. This kid's temper is too strong. If he's not careful, it will backfire. It's better to let nature take its course. By the way, don't you think Ling Yunfei is very similar to someone? The beautiful woman was stunned and asked doubtfully, Like who? Ling Feng. Elder Wan spat out this name, his old eyes shining. The beautiful woman's pupils shrank. Elder Wan said, Ling Feng is from the Ling family of Black Bear City, and so is Ling Yunfei. They both have sky-blue eyes and hair. Could there be some relationship between them? These words seemed to evoke the beautiful woman's memories, and she was silent for a long time. A moment later, she shook her head and said, Don't ask Ling Yunfei about this matter. Didn't Ling also grow up in Black Bear City? Find some time to ask her. Elder One nodded. After dawn, Qin Feiyang closed the iron-covered book, and a trace of disappointment crept up on his face. He muttered to himself, How have you been in the Lin family these past few months? Whoosh! The next moment, he disappeared without a trace. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear out of thin air, Shi Zheng was no longer surprised. The two of them left the room one after the other. Zhang Haoyan has come out. Brother Zhang, can you help me refine a few top-grade medicinal pills? Big Brother Zhang, I've been waiting for you here all night. In the lobby, early in the morning, the house was full of guests. In fact, they were all waiting for Qin Feiyang. As soon as they saw Qin Feiyang appear, they immediately stood up and looked at him pleadingly. Qin Feiyang walked downstairs and said to Shi Zheng, "Help me settle the bill." "Yes." Shi Zheng nodded, turned around and walked towards the counter. Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd, looked at the pairs of eyes full of desire and smiled. "Everyone, I also want to help you refine pills, but refining pills is a very complicated process. I can't do anything. I really want to, but I can't." In an instant, everyone's face was filled with disappointment. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled. "How about this? Every month I will give out 1,000 top-grade medicinal pills for free at the gate of the Martial Imperial Hall. But it will only be limited to healing pills and bone-replenishing pills. Free." Hearing this, everyone was excited again. Qin Feiyang smiled. "The first distribution of medicinal pills will be 10 days later in the morning. Remember to line up early and help me spread the news." "No problem. We will definitely let everyone in Yen City know about this in the shortest time possible." Everyone roared excitedly. At this time, Shi Zheng walked over and whispered, "It's done." "Then let's go." Qin Feiyang smiled, turned around, and walked towards the gate. "Brother Jiang, take care." The crowd automatically separated, and one after another, they all cupped their hands to send him off. After Qin Feiyang left, the Flying Phoenix Pavilion was in an uproar. "I didn't expect him to be so nice. I thought he would look down on us." "Yeah, I also thought he would put on airs and look down on us. His character really isn't just for show. No matter what happens in the future, we have to support him." "That's right. Such a kind-hearted young man. We won't let anyone bully him." Everyone was in high spirits as they discussed. Suddenly, someone said, 80,000 top-grade medicinal pills. Isn't that too little? There are millions of people in Yen City. How are we going to divide it?" As soon as these words came out, it immediately caused public outrage. "What are you talking about? He doesn't cultivate? Refining pills for you every day? Don't be dissatisfied. Look at the Danwang Hall. There are more than 1,000 alchemists. Have they ever given out a medicinal pill for free? What's more, he's refining supreme-grade medicinal pills. How can ordinary medicinal pills compare to them? If you say something like that again, don't blame us for being rude." On the street, anyone who met Qin Feiyang would go up and greet him. Qin Feiyang didn't show the slightest bit of impatience. He greeted him with a smile, appearing very amiable and approachable. In the eyes of those big shots, he was an arrogant young man. But in the eyes of these ordinary people, he was a sensible and polite child. Shi Zheng frowned along the way. Seeing that they were about to enter the East District, he could not help but ask, "Jiang Haotian, why do I feel that you're acting a little strange today?" "Am I?" Qin Feiyang asked. Shi Zheng nodded and said, "Yes, let's not talk about the free medicinal pills first. Just your attitude towards everyone is different from before. Do you know me well? Do you know what kind of person I am?" Qin Feiyang asked back. Shi Zheng shook his head. To be honest, he did not know him at all. This boy was like a veil covering him. He did not know when he was showing his true side. "That's right." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and did not explain further, because some things could only be kept in the heart. The Lin family, as the most powerful family in Yen City, the Lin family's mansion was naturally extraordinary. It covered an area of several miles. There was a garden, a pavilion, a small stream, everything one could think of. On both sides of the gate, there were 2 stone sculptures. They were 2 tigers that were 3 to 4 meters tall and looked majestic. Beside the stone statue stood 4 guards. Their sharp gazes were incomparably sharp. But when they saw Qin Feiyang and Shi Zheng walking over, their eyes instantly changed, showing flattery and flattery. "Greetings, young Master Jiang." The 4 guards went up and bowed. Qin Feiyang said faintly, "Please inform the Lin family head that Jiang Haotian is here to visit." He could be good to anyone, except for the Lin family. The family head said that as long as young master comes, there is no need to inform. Young Master Jiang, Elder Shi, please come in. One of the guards led Qin Feiyang and the other into the main gate and went straight to the guest hall that the Lin clan used to receive distinguished guests. Please take a seat. I will ask the family head to come in. The guard said flatteringly and walked out of the reception hall. He told the two maids outside the door, treat young Master Jiang well. Don't let anything happen to him. Understand? The two maids nodded and hurried to serve tea. In the Lin family's conference hall, Lin Han sat on a chair and looked down at an old man in black. He shouted, "It's been half a year and you still haven't found Qin Feiyang. What the hell are you doing?" The old man in black trembled and hurriedly said, "Family head, we can't do anything. He seems to have disappeared from the world. No matter how hard we search, we can't find his whereabouts." Lin Han said angrily, "I don't care if he disappeared from the world or not. I only want results. Understand?" The old man in black nodded and said, Yes, I understand. I will immediately tell them to hurry up." Lin Han said, "Give them another half a year. If they still can't find him, bring their heads back to me." "Yes." The old man in black bowed and replied. However, the two of them didn't know that the person they were trying to find had not only entered the Lin family's residence, but was also sitting openly in the reception hall. "Family head," at this moment, the guard hurriedly ran into the hall. The old man in black frowned and shouted, "Can't you see that I am discussing something with the family head? Get out." The guard said anxiously, "Steward Lin, Jiang Haoqian is here." What? Steward Lin was shocked. Why was he here so soon? Lin Han also stood up, his eyes shining. He waved his hand and said, "You can leave first." After the guard left, Steward Lin looked up at Lin Han and asked, "Family head, have you thought of a way to bribe him?" Lin Han said, "What do men want in life? It's nothing more than wealth, power, and beauty." Steward Lin thought for a moment and said, "This kid shouldn't be lacking in wealth now. As for power, we can't give him that either. So all that's left is beauty. I understand. Family head, I will arrange it right away." Lin Han shook his head and said, "Not only beauty, but also wealth. Prepare 5 million gold coins and bring that jar of wine that I have treasured for many years." Steward Lin's expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Family head, that jar of wine was bestowed by the King of Yen. Even you can't bear to drink it." Lin Han waved his hand and said, "You can't catch the wolf without risking the child. Go and arrange it quickly." "Yes." Steward Lin responded helplessly and turned to go and arrange it. "I don't believe that with my methods I can't bribe a greenhorn who is still wet behind the ears." Lin Han sneered and strode out of the meeting hall. He came to the reception hall and cupped his hands with a smile. "Little brother, we are honored by your presence. I hope you won't blame us for not welcoming you properly." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he stood up with a smile. "You're too kind, family head Lin." Lin Han nodded at Elder Shi, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Little brother, since you've come, then no matter what, you should stay in the Lin clan for a few days. Let me, Lin, be a good host." This, Qin Feiyang hesitated. Lin Han said, "Little brother, if you refuse, you'll be looking down on me and the Lin family." Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and nodded. "All right, since family head Lin has invited me so kindly, it would be impolite of me to refuse." "Ha ha!" Lin Han was secretly delighted and laughed. "Little brother, you're indeed a straightforward person. Come, take a seat." Shi Zheng raised his eyebrows subtly. Chapter 140. Qin Feiyang had only one purpose for this trip, which was to understand Lin Yi's current living situation. But he couldn't show concern for Lin Yi in front of Lin Han, because this would make Lin Han suspicious. Lin Han might even use Lin Yi to get close to him and bribe him. So, staying in the Lin family for the time being was the best choice. After chatting in the living room for a while, Lin Han proposed to take Qin Feiyong out for a stroll. Qin Feiyong did not refuse. The layout of the Lin family was also quite particular. There were groups of rockery and hundreds of flowers in full bloom. A small stream meandered through the entire Lin mansion. The water was so clear that one could see the bottom. Schools of colorful fish swam happily in the water. On both sides of the stream, small green trees swayed in the wind like young girls, showing their youthful vitality. But all of this, Qin Feiyong didn't care about it. He was thinking about how to see Lin Yi without being suspected. Unknowingly, it was noon. Butler Lin came over and bowed. "Family Master, the wine and dishes are ready." Family Master Lin nodded and looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. "Little brother, please." "Please," Qin Feiyong said. The dishes were very sumptuous and they looked, smelled, and tasted good. At the door, in addition to a few maids, there was a man and a woman. The man wore a purple robe and was about 20 years old. His facial features were somewhat similar to Lin Han's. The woman was only 15 or 16 years old. She wore a white dress that was spotless. Her black hair was soft and beautiful. Her skin was creamy and her eyebrows were picturesque. She was like a woman in a painting. She was stunning. However, if one looked closely, one would find that there was a hint of melancholy hidden in her clear eyes. Qin Feiyong and Lin Han walked side by side from the path in front. When Qin Feiyong looked up and saw the girl in white, there was a hint of joy in his eyes. That's right, that girl was Lin Yi. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. He didn't expect Lin Yi to come to this dinner. "Father," seeing Qin Feiyong's group, the purple-clad young man immediately went up to them. "Godfather." Lin Yi also walked over and bowed. Lin Han nodded and turned to look at Qin Feiyong. He smiled and said, "Little brother, let me introduce you. This is my son, Lin Hao. This is my adopted daughter, Lin Yi. Hao, Yi, the one standing in front of you is the young genius that shook Swallow City, Jiang Haoyin." Lin Hao cupped his fists and said, "Brother Jiang, I've heard a lot about you. Please take care of me in the future. Greetings, young Master Jiang." At the same time, Lin Yi also saluted Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong glanced at Lin Yi and smiled. "Nice to meet you too. Let's go in and chat while drinking." Lin Han greeted them and led them to the dining room. "It's been hard on you." Qin Feiyong looked at Lin Yi's back and muttered to himself. Although Lin Yi's living conditions and clothes were better than before, Qin Feiyong couldn't see a sincere smile on her face. She was forcing a smile. It was obvious that she was not happy here. Walking into the dining room, Lin Han personally helped Qin Feiyong move the chair and smiled. "Little brother, please sit down." "Thank you, Family Master Lin." Qin Feiyong thanked him and sat on the chair. He looked at the dishes on the table without any appetite. Although he didn't see it with his own eyes, he could imagine how Lin Yi spent the past few months. He was a little sad. He was sad for Lin Chong, Lin Yi, and himself. Lin Han sat next to Qin Feiyong, and Shi Zheng sat on the other side of Qin Feiyong. As for Lin Hao and Lin Yi, they sat on the right side of Lin Han. Lin Han smiled and said, "Steward, give me the wine." Steward Lin immediately sent a pot of wine and smiled. "Family Master, let me pour the wine." "No need. I want to entertain the little brother personally." Lin Han grabbed the wine pot and poured wine for Qin Feiyong while smiling. This pot of wine was bestowed by King Yen in the past. "I have kept it for many years and have never been willing to drink it. Today, I will use it to entertain the little brother." Wine. It was indeed mellow. People couldn't help but swallow their saliva. But this would only make Qin Feiyong more irritated. Lin Han pushed the wine cup in front of Qin Feiyong and smiled. "Little brother, would you like to try it?" Qin Feiyang held the wine cup and frowned imperceptibly. King Yan's bestowed wine that even he was reluctant to drink, but now it was used to entertain him. It seemed that Lin Han had begun to bribe him. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Family Master Lin, I'm sorry. I really don't know how to drink. I will let Elder Shi do it for me." After that, he handed the wine cup to Shi Zheng. Shi Zheng didn't stand on ceremony and drank it in one gulp. He nodded and said, "Yes, this is indeed the imperial wine of the palace." Seeing this, Lin Han's eyes flashed with a hint of displeasure, and he smiled. "Which man in the world doesn't know how to drink? Little brother, don't stand on ceremony." As he spoke, he was about to pour another cup of wine for Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang reached out to hold the wine cup and smiled bitterly. "Family Master Lin, I really don't know how to drink. Otherwise, I wouldn't have refused the first prince last night." Lin Han was stunned. It seemed that this was indeed the case. When he went to the Flying Phoenix restaurant last night and saw this young man, the first thing the first prince said was to invite him to drink. At that time, this young man directly refused. "Sigh, I miscalculated." Lin Han was a little angry. If taking out the treasure that he had kept for many years could make the other party happy, then it was worth it. But now, after spending so much effort and even pouring wine for him personally, their relationship didn't improve at all. The gains didn't make up for the losses. "Steward, take the wine away," Lin Han ordered. Since he didn't want to drink, then there was no need to waste it. Shi Zheng hurriedly said, "Don't. If Jiang Haotian doesn't want to drink, I'll drink. Don't tell me that Family Master Lin is so stingy that you can't bear to part with it?" Lin Han smiled and said, "Of course not. How? Go accompany Elder Shi and drink a few more cups." "Okay." Lin Hao nodded and got up to take the wine pot from Steward Lin. He sat next to Shi Zheng and poured wine for him. At the same time, Lin Han also gave Steward Lin a look. Steward Lin understood and took out a Qinkuan bag. Lin Han placed the Qinkuan bag in front of Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Little brother, although the Lin family is rich, I really don't have anything to give you. I hope you don't mind." Qin Feiyang took the Qinkuan bag, and a flash of light flashed across his eyes. Lin Han smiled and said, "Little brother, this is a small gift for me. I hope you can accept it." "This is not a good idea. I don't deserve it." Qin Feiyang was a little embarrassed. Lin Han waved his hand and said, "It's okay. Just take it as a gift." "A gift of a few million yuan. How generous." Qin Feiyang sneered. Since Lin Han insisted on the stronghold, wouldn't it be too embarrassing if he didn't accept it? Besides, he really couldn't find a reason to refuse something that was delivered to his doorstep. "Thank you, Patriarch Lin." Qin Feiyang put the Qinkuan bag into his pocket. He would be an idiot if he didn't take advantage of it. Lin Han also smiled. The first step was finally successful. Ahem. He coughed dryly and gave Butler Lin a look. Steward Lin nodded and clapped his hands. 3 beautiful women walked in leisurely and stood beside Butler Lin. The 3 of them were only 16 years old. They had exquisite figures and looked quite sweet. Qin Feiyang turned around and looked at the 3 women with a strange expression. What era was this? How old-fashioned. Lin Han didn't notice at all. He smiled and said, "Little brother, if you like, pick any one of them. Of course, you can take all 3. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He turned to look at Lin Han and said, "Patriarch Lin, I'm still underage. Is it okay for you to do this? Be careful that others don't scold you behind your back. You're a bad influence on children." Underage? Lin Han was stunned. It wasn't until this moment that he suddenly realized. The kid in front of him was not even 16 years old. Well, Lin Han was embarrassed. If news of him seducing an underage boy spread, wouldn't the world laugh their heads off? Steward Lin smiled and said, "Young Master Jiang, 15 years old is not young. Look at the disciples of the noble families. Aren't they only 14 or 15 years old? Don't they still run around looking for women every day? Yes, yes, yes. Lin Han nodded and looked at Steward Lin with admiration. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Indeed, but I'm a conservative person. I don't like this kind of thing. It's better not to ruin them. After all, they don't have it easy. Lin Han was at his wit's end. He looked at Steward Lin. Steward Lin also had a helpless expression on his face. Qin Feiyang stood up and smiled. I suddenly remembered something, so I have to leave now. I'll visit you another day when I'm free. Ah, you're leaving already? Is it because I didn't treat you well enough that you're angry? If that's the case, I apologize to you. Lin Han hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, You're being too serious. Patriarch Lin, you're full of enthusiasm and even gave me a big gift. I'm really grateful, but I really have some urgent matters to attend to. Lin Han was burning with anxiety. He said, Young Master. Steward Lin smiled and said, Patriarch, since young Master Zhang has something to attend to, let's not force him to stay. After all, there are still many opportunities for us to meet in the future. Lin Han frowned and nodded. All right then. Young Master, I'll see you out. No need. I know the way out. After Qin Feiyang said that, he called Shi Zheng and strode out. After the two left, Lin Han turned his head to look at Steward Lin and frowned. Why did you interrupt me just now? Steward Lin said, Patriarch, can't you see that this kid is just toying with us? Toying with us? Lin Han raised his eyebrows. Steward Lin said, I'm afraid that he already knew that we were bribing him as soon as we sat on the table. Patriarch, this kid's mind is not simple. Don't underestimate him. Lin Han said angrily, According to what you said, wouldn't the 5 million gold coins be wasted? What else can I do? We can't ask for it back now, right? Steward Lin smiled bitterly. Damn it. Lin Han slammed his palm on the dining table, revealing a ferocious look. After all this time, this little bastard was actually toying with him. It's unforgivable. Lin Yi got up and said, Foster father, if there's nothing else, you will go back to the house first. Lin Han nodded and said, Oh right, you'll be 16 in 5 months. You should prepare to get married to the first prince as soon as possible. When you're free, you should go out with the first prince more often to cultivate your feelings. Yes, Lin Yi's tender body trembled. She nodded in response, turned around and left. The disappointment in her eyes was even stronger. Chapter 141. After leaving the Lin family, Shi Zheng frowned and wondered, Jiang Haoqian, I really don't understand. Why did you come to the Lin family? Qin Feiyang said, I came to collect money. Collect money? Shi Zheng was slightly taken aback. Did the previous Cosmos pouch contain gold coins? He asked. How do you know that he will give you money? Qin Feiyang said, Otherwise, why would I come to the Lin family? I'm not full. Shi Zheng said, How many gold coins did he give you? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I don't know. It should be a few million. Not only did he learn about Lin Yi's recent situation, but he also gained such a large amount of wealth. This trip was not in vain. But now, Lin Han was probably going crazy with anger. A few million. Shi Zheng's eyes widened in disbelief. Is this Lin Han crazy? How can he be so generous? Next, Qin Feiyang went to the treasure pavilion again and bought 10,000 sets of medicinal materials for healing pill and 10,000 sets of medicinal materials for bone replenishing pill for Manager Li. Manager Li also gave the 10 sets of medicinal materials for Scarlet Fire colored glass pill to Qin Feiyang. They agreed that Manager Li would go to the Martial Emperor Hall to pick it up 10 days later. Everything was settled. Qin Feiyang returned to the Martial Emperor Hall with Shi Zheng. The disciples of the Martial Emperor Hall went crazy. They stopped Qin Feiyang halfway and insisted that he help to refine medicinal pills. Finally, It was Elder Wan who came forward to control the situation. After Elder Wan gave the prepared 6 sets of medicinal materials for Scarlet Fire, Colored Glass Pill, to Qin Feiyang, he asked Shi Zheng to take Qin Feiyang to his residence. Dozens of attics were located side by side in a corner of the Danwang Hall. Behind the attics, there was a low mountain about 10 meters high, forming a natural barrier to block the cool wind blowing slowly. In front, there was a lake about 1,000 feet long. The sun spread and the blue waves rippled. The green willow trees on the shore swayed in the wind, showing a kind of tranquility. A 2-meter-wide wooden bridge stretched across the lake, connecting the two sides. When Qin Feiyang arrived here, he immediately fell in love with this place. Shi Zheng smiled and said, "This place is called Calm Lake. Only very important guests can stay here." "Doesn't that mean that I'm important?" Qin Feiyang asked. "What do you think?" Shi Zheng asked. "Isn't this nonsense? Since I'm already here, how can I not be important?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. "I like the name Tranquil Lake." The two walked to the opposite side. Qin Feiyang asked. Shi Zheng shook his head and said, "Not at the moment, but there might be in the future. Elder One has instructed that you stay in the first pavilion on the right. I will also stay behind to continue protecting you." Qin Feiyang said, "There's no need for that. You can go and do your thing. After all, in the Yan County, no one dares to break into the martial imperial palace and harm me." Shi Zheng said, "It's better to be safe than sorry. If you're worried that I'll hinder you, then I'll stay next door. If you need anything, just call me." "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. With Shi Zheng by his side, his safety was indeed guaranteed, but it was still somewhat inconvenient. "Jiang Haotian!" Suddenly, a furious roar could be heard coming from behind. Qin Feiyang's expression froze and said to Shi Zheng, "Just say that you didn't see me." Before he finished, he used the smoke-gathering steps, and in a few breaths he ran to the front of the attic, pushed the door open and locked it. Then he looked outside through the crack in the door. Feng Ling Er, who was wearing a tight suit and a white mask, quickly ran in front of Elder Shi and asked, "Elder, where's Jiang Haotian?" Elder Shi pursed his lips towards the attic where Qin Feiyang was. Feng Ling Er immediately ran towards the attic. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang was quite annoyed. This Shi Zheng was too unreliable. Shua! He entered the castle without hesitation. He actually locked the door. Feng Ling Er came to the door and pushed it hard. She was immediately furious and kicked it fiercely. With a bang, the door was kicked open by her. "Jiang Haotian, come out. You actually didn't give me the top-grade Scarlet Fire glass pill. That's too much. At least I helped you before." Feng Ling Er was like a furious tigress, looking for Qin Feiyang all over the room. But she couldn't find him. "Bastard, he must be hiding in that place. Don't think that you'll be fine if you hide. If you don't come out, I'll reveal you're true." Before Feng Ling Er finished, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air and said in distress, "What do you want?" Feng Ling Er joked, "Come out. I thought you were going to hide for a lifetime. Quickly give me a top-grade Scarlet Fire glass pill." Qin Feiyang said angrily, "I have a total of 3. Fatso won me one and Ling Yunfei one. Do you want me to steal it for you now?" Feng Ling Er crossed her arms in front of her chest and said playfully, "Okay, as long as you can steal it." A row of black lines appeared on Qin Feiyang's forehead. He glanced at a certain part of Feng Ling Er and said lightly, "I know you're very big there. Don't show off deliberately." Feng Ling Er was stunned. When she understood, she immediately gritted her teeth and her face turned red with anger. "Cough, cough." Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. His face became serious and asked, "Is there any news about your grandfather?" "Grandpa." At the mention of Feng Qing, Feng Ling Er's delicate body trembled, and her eyes were full of worry. But soon the worry was covered up, and she stared at Qin Feiyang and said, Don't try to change the topic. Alas, Qin Feiyong sighed secretly. She was obviously in pain, but she pretended not to care. He didn't know if he should say that she was strong or stupid. He grabbed Feng Ling Er's hand and entered the castle. Feng Ling Er frowned. Why did you bring me here? Qin Feiyong said with a smile, Don't you want the top-grade scarlet fireglass pill? I'll refine one for you right now. Oh, Feng Ling Er nodded, still a little touched in her heart. But suddenly, she raised her eyebrows and said playfully, Do you like holding my hand so much? Ah, Qin Feiyong was stunned. Only then did he realize that he had forgotten to let go. This, Qin Feiyong smiled awkwardly, hurriedly let go of his hand, and walked towards the pill furnace. Feng Ling Er teased, I didn't know that you have such a perverted courage in your stomach. No wonder you have such a good relationship with the wolf. You are all the same, pervert. Qin Feiyong almost tripped and fell to the ground. Little thing? Why was this name so awkward? Don't disturb me when I'm refining pills, he said without looking back, took out the medicinal materials, concentrated, and began to refine pills. Wolf King lay on the ground weakly, glanced at Qin Feiyong, and then at Feng Ling Er and sighed. Lying here and getting shot, Wolf King is really unlucky. When can he go out and behave atrociously? Qin Feiyong said, Don't worry, I'm already making arrangements. It won't be long before you can walk around Yen City openly. Really? Wolf King was surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded. After all, changing his name and appearance was not a long-term plan. So, he made a plan very seriously. As long as the plan succeeded, not only Wolf King, but he also didn't have to continue hiding. With the previous 3 alchemy experiences, refining the scarlet fireglass pill this time was much smoother. In less than 200 breaths, the pill was out of the furnace. He grabbed it in his hand, turned around and handed it to Feng Ling Er, and said with a smile, Take it! Feng Ling Er took the pill and looked at it over and over. Finally, she couldn't help but exclaim, This pill pattern is really beautiful. If you take it to the auction, it will definitely be sold at an amazing price. Little thing, thank you. In the future, Sister will protect you in the Martial King Hall. Sister? Qin Feiyong was stunned. Why did it feel more and more awkward? Qin Feiyong said, If you take it to the auction, then give it back to me. I'm just saying. When I break through to the 3-star Martial Grandmaster, I will take it and step into the 5-star Martial Grandmaster in one fell swoop. I will work hard to become stronger and save Grandpa in person. Feng Ling Er clenched her jade-like hands, and a determined light burst out from her eyes. Qin Feiyong frowned. It was not that he didn't believe in Feng Ling Er. With Feng Ling Er's talent, surpassing Zuo-En was a matter of time. But it needed time, and Zuo-En had been refining the blood spirit pill. His cultivation speed would definitely be faster than theirs. He was afraid that before Feng Ling Er could surpass him, he would have stepped into the 9-star combat Emperor first. At that time, not to mention them, even the county of Yen would be in chaos. This Zuo-En was a ticking time bomb. If they didn't remove him, no one would be at ease. After sending Feng Ling Er out, Qin Feiyong calmed down and continued to refine the red fire glaze pill. 10 sets of herbs in the treasure pavilion. 6 sets of herbs in the Martial King Hall. He could get 8 pills in half. After deducting the one he gave to Feng Ling Er, there were still 7 pills left. The image crystal stone had been found. Late at night, it was as silent as ashes. Danwang Hall, herb field. The herbs were overflowing with light, looking particularly attractive under the moonlight. Fatso stood at the edge of the herb field, glancing at the herbs. His squinted eyes were shining, and he was almost drooling. There was a small wooden building behind him. Candlelight flickered on the 2nd floor of the building. Fatso looked back at the 2nd floor and frowned slightly. It's easy to rob the herb field, but how can I get away? Go to Boss Chin? That will definitely get him into trouble. Moreover, with Fat Lord's current speed, it will take him half a day to reach the Martial Imperial Hall. I'm afraid that he will be caught by those two old dogs before he even reaches the Martial Imperial Hall. Should I leave Yen City and hide somewhere outside? No, Yen City is not Black Bear City. The fierce beasts in the mountains are too strong. Hiding in the mountains is suicide. What should I do? Fatso racked his brains, but he couldn't make up his mind. I have an idea. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and he came up with a plan. Lord Fatty is simply too smart. When the time comes, those old things will definitely die of anger. He laughed sinisterly and shouted at the second floor of the building. Elder Jing, can you come out for a moment? What? A loud shout came from the second floor. Fatso said, I have a way to persuade Jiang Haotian to change his mind. Creak. The window on the second floor opened. A middle-aged man stood in front of the window and asked, Really? Yes. Chapter 142. Elder Jing raised his eyebrows and seemed a little unhappy. Fatso tempted. Elder Jing, once this matter is successful, it will be a great merit. Great merit. Elder Jing's eyes lit up. He jumped down from the window and landed in front of Fatso, asking, How do you want this elder to cooperate with you? Fatso said, Jiang Haotian has a special hobby. As long as we cater to his hobby, he will definitely agree. What hobby? Elder Jing was surprised. Fatso said he likes to eat bear paws. Bear paws? Elder Jing was taken aback and smiled. That's simple. We'll just go to the restaurant and buy one. No. Fatso waved his hand and shook his head. The bear paws in the restaurant have been stored for a long time. They're not fresh at all. Jiang Haotian likes fresh bear paws. It's best if they're just cut off. In the middle of the night, where are we going to find fresh bear paws for him? Elder Jing immediately frowned. Fatso said, Outside the city, in such a huge mountain range, I don't believe there's not even a bear. There are definitely bears in the mountain range, but it will take at least an hour to go back and forth. Elder Jing was a little embarrassed. His duty was to guard the medicinal field. If he went outside the city to look for bear paws, he would be absent from his post. If the higher-ups found out, he would be punished. I originally wanted to go by myself, but with my little strength, I won't be enough to fill the gaps between the beast's teeth. So, I have to trouble you to make a trip personally. I understand your concerns, Elder. Don't worry, I will definitely not leave and guard the medicinal field. What's more, if we can make Jiang Haotian change his mind, Elder, he will not only not punish you, but he might even reward you with a few battle chi pills. Who knows? You might even become the next law enforcement elder. Fatso instigated. Battle chi pills. The next candidate. Hearing this, Elder Jing suddenly became spirited and was incomparably excited. Elder, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You must grasp it well. Fatso struck while the iron was hot and continued to fan the flames. Elder Jing gritted his teeth and said, Fine, I'll go out of the city now. It must be 100% fresh. Fatso said worriedly. Yes. Elder Jing nodded. However, you must guard the medicinal field well. There must not be any mishaps. If anything happens, just yell. The deacon elders who live nearby will come to help as soon as possible. Elder Jing reminded. Elder, don't worry. Whoever wants to steal the medicinal herbs will have to step over this disciple's corpse first. Fatso said solemnly. Not bad. Elder Jing patted him on the shoulder and nodded in relief. Then he turned around and followed the path, quickly disappearing into the night. Fatso's face was full of disdain. So what if he was strong? Without a clever mind, he would still be played like a monkey. There's a girl in the village called Xiaofang. She's pretty and kind. He proudly hummed a little tune as he entered the medicinal field and began his plan to loot it. However, when he bent down, grabbed a medicinal herb, and was about to uproot it, Elder Jing turned back. Seeing Fatso's behavior, he shouted, "What are you doing?" Fatso's round body stiffened as he cursed. "Damn it, why did you come back?" In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Suddenly, he pointed at the medicinal herb and scolded angrily. "Look at them. They're both spirit essences. How beautiful are they? What about you? Ugly melon, cracked dates. You're simply an oddity. Are you worthy of Fat Lord giving you glue and weeding you every day? Can't you be more useful?" The medicinal herb felt wronged. If he could speak, he would definitely scold Fatso. As a person, he couldn't be shameless to this extent. Elder Jing also had a look of disdain. He actually took a medicinal herb seriously. This Fatso was indeed an idiot. "Hurry up and look better, or Fat Lord will feed you to the fish." Fatso glared fiercely at the medicinal herb again, then got up, looked at Elder Jing, and said with a smile, "This medicinal herb has grown crooked. This disciple will straighten it." Then he asked, "Elder, you got the bear paw back so quickly." Cough, cough. Elder Jing coughed dryly, holding back his laughter. "How can it be so fast? I came back to tell you that after this matter is successful, if Elder He and the others ask you, you can say that this idea was mine. But if it fails, it has nothing to do with me. You have to take full responsibility." Elder Jing said expressionlessly. This, Fatso hesitated. "What, do you have an opinion?" Elder Jing frowned, and his eyes were unkind. How would this disciple dare to have an opinion? "Whatever you say, Elder, this disciple will do." Fatso hurriedly waved his hand and said with a flattering face, "That's more like it." Elder Jing glanced at Fatso disdainfully, then turned and left again. "Son of a bitch! Do you really think that Fat Lord is a pushover?" Fatso's eyes were cold. After waiting for about 50 to 60 breaths, seeing that Elder Jing did not return, he took out his Cosmos bag, ran into the medicinal field, and frantically looted. It was already late at night. The people in Danwang Hall were either cultivating or resting. Basically, no one would come to the medicinal field at this time, but one could never be too careful. Therefore, Fatso was very nervous at this moment. Once he was discovered, even if he had 9 lives, it would not be enough to kill him. After a while, he was already sweating profusely. He was not tired. He was too nervous. He wished that he could grow 3 heads and 6 arms now. The medicinal field was too big. It was impossible to sweep it clean in a short time. With a nervous mood, Fatso finally looted the entire medicinal field after an hour. Retreat. Following closely, he ran towards the small path. On the way, he encountered a medicinal herb that he had missed before. Without hesitation, he uprooted it and threw it into his Cosmos bag. Fat Lord didn't even leave a feather for you. After a few breaths, he stood on the small path and glanced back at the medicinal field. His eyes were full of sarcasm. He turned around and pretended to be very calm and walked outside. Soon, he came to the reception hall. Fatso hid outside the door and glanced at the hall sneakily. Seeing that Lu Hong was alone, he walked in and asked in a low voice, "Where's Wang Yu?" No one came at night. He went to cultivate. "Why did you suddenly come here?" "And you look so sneaky." Lu Hong looked at him in confusion. "Fat Lord is here to take you flying." Fatso smiled sinisterly. "Flying?" Lu Hong was stunned. "Stop talking nonsense. Let's go," Fatso urged. "Where exactly are we going?" Lu Hong furrowed her brows. "It must be something good. Don't ask. You'll know when you meet up with Jiang Haoyan," Fatso said. "No, I'm the only one in the reception hall now. I can't leave without permission." Lu Hong shook her head and said, "Woman, Why are you so long-winded? Just go when I tell you to go. Fatso was impatient. He grabbed Lu Hong and dragged her outside. Okay, I can go by myself. I'd like to see what you're up to. Lu Hong struggled to break free, rolled her eyes at Fatso, and ran out of the hall with Fatso. They entered a street and ran forward. However, she had no idea that she had been dragged onto the pirate ship by Fatso and could never get down. The Danwang Hall was in the South City District. Given their speed, not to mention running to the North City District where the Marshall Imperial Hall was located, it would take them 2 to 4 hours just to run out of the South City District. So halfway, they bumped into Elder Jing, who had returned. Fatso, didn't I ask you to guard the herb field? Why did you run out without permission? And you, Lu Hong, aren't you afraid of being punished by Wang Yu for leaving your post without permission? Elder Jing stood in front of them, his body stained with blood. He stared at the two of them gloomily. Lu Hong's face turned pale. She hurriedly said, "It was Fatso who dragged me out. Please forgive me, Elder." Elder Jing was furious. He shouted sternly, "Fatso, what should you do?" Fatso smiled flatteringly. "Elder Jing, don't be angry. Let me finish." "Okay, go ahead." Elder Jing said, "I don't want to waste time, so I came to meet you. Then we'll go to the Marshall Imperial Hall together. As for calling Lu Hong, it's because she's also very familiar with Jiang Haotian. She'll definitely be able to help when the time comes." "Elder, you don't want to work so hard and fail in the end, right?" Fatso said. "Is that so?" Elder Jing frowned. "Of course. Would I dare to lie to you?" Fatso smiled flatteringly. "This fat pig is timid and afraid of death. He definitely doesn't have the guts to lie to me." Elder Jing cursed in his heart and asked, "What about the herb field?" "Elder, don't worry. It's just one night. There won't be any problems. Moreover, in the entire Yin County, who would dare to behave atrociously in the Danwang Hall? As for the disciples, it's already late at night. They've all gone to sleep. Who would go to the herb field? So, even if we leave our post without permission, no one will know." Fatso used his glib tongue to make Elder Jing completely give up his doubts. Next, he asked again, "Elder, did you get the bear paws?" Elder Jing nodded and said, "I got 4 of them." "Good." Fatso was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Elder Jing, now I'll have to trouble you again. Take us to the Marshall Emperor Hall as soon as possible. Let's try to settle Jiang Haotian before dawn. By then, you'll definitely have a meteoric rise and a meteoric rise." Elder Jing's eyes lit up. He grabbed the 2 of them and sped toward the North City District. "Idiot!" Fatso sneered in his heart. In fact, all of this was within his calculations. He asked Elder Jing to go outside the city to get the bear paws purely because he wanted to buy enough time to ransack the herb field. After ransacking the herb field, he naturally couldn't continue to stay in the Danwang Hall. If he was discovered, wouldn't he be dead meat? So, he instigated Lu Hong to escape from the Danwang Hall. At first glance, it seemed unintentional to meet Elder Jing halfway, but it was also part of his plan. This street was the main road to the Danwang Hall. As the deacon elder of the Danwang Hall, Elder Jing was not going to do anything shameful in the middle of the night. Therefore, it was impossible for him to take a detour through the alleys. Therefore, the meeting was within his expectations. The reason why he still looked for Elder Jing was that only by using Elder Jing could he rush to meet up with Qin Feiyang as soon as possible. Moreover, if they met halfway, Elder Jing would not know that he had already ransacked the herb field. Instead, he would happily send him to the Marshall Emperor Hall. This was his carefully planned plan to ransack the herb field and escape from the Danwang Hall. It could be said that it was watertight. Of course, the premise of all of this was ambition and desire. Chapter 143. Half an hour later, Elder Jing brought Fatso and Lu Hong to the Marshall Imperial Hall. Outside the gate, Fatso smiled and said, Elder Jing, you go back first and wait for my good news. Elder Jing's expression froze, and he frowned. Aren't we going to find Jiang Haoqian together? Elder, I also want to take you with me. But you also know that Jiang Haoqian hates the people of the Danwang Hall. Look at that senior brother Shuiyang. Isn't he very miserable because of him? He went everywhere to borrow gold coins and now owes a lot of debt. So if you go with him, I'm afraid this matter will most likely fail. This, Elder Jing was hesitant. Elder, don't worry. I will definitely not steal your credit. Besides, haven't you always been worried about the herb field? Hurry up and go back to take a look. Fatso reassured him. Elder Jing thought for a moment and nodded. All right then. Remember to inform me as soon as you succeed. Of course. Fatso patted his chest and said. Elder Jing didn't say anything else. After giving the forebear pause to Fatso, he left with peace of mind. Looking at the back view that quickly disappeared into the distance, Fatso's face bloomed with joy. When this Elder Jing went back and took a look, he would definitely be dumbfounded. Damn, Fatso, what the hell are you doing? Seeing the smile on Fatso's face, Lu Hong had an uneasy premonition in her heart. Aya, why are you asking so many questions? Let's go and find Jiang Laoda. Fatso dragged the suspicious Lu Hong and swaggered into the reception hall. A middle-aged man in his 40s sat alone in the hall. When he saw Fatso and Lu Hong, he frowned slightly, because both of them were wearing the Danwang Hall's uniform. The middle-aged man stood up and asked, What are the disciples of the Danwang Hall doing here in the middle of the night? Fatso cupped his hands and said, Elder, we are Jiang Haoqian's friends. Please inform him. What proof do you have? Hearing this, the middle-aged man did not dare to be negligent. Proof? After pondering for a moment, Fatso shook his head. I don't have any proof. But if you tell him that Situ Tianyu and Lu Hong came looking for him, he will know. By the way, we came to Yen City with Jiang Haoqian, Ling Yunfei, and Feng Ling Er, he added. So you're also from Black Bear City? The middle-aged man asked. Fatso and Lu Hong nodded. Sizing up the two of them, the middle-aged man suddenly thought of something and asked Fatso, Are you the one who helped Jiang Haoqian spread the news? Yes, yes. Fatso nodded repeatedly. The middle-aged man shouted, Dong Yin, come down for a moment. Thud, thud. Before long, accompanied by the sound of footsteps, a 15 or 16-year-old youth walked down from the second floor, yawning continuously with sleepy eyes. Frowning, the middle-aged man shouted, Wake up and bring them to see Jiang Haoqian. Jiang Haoqian! The youth's eyes lit up and he was instantly energized. Both of you follow me. Are you close to Jiang Haoqian? Can you help me and get him to refine a few hundred supreme-grade elixirs for me? If it works, I'll definitely thank you properly. The youth was very talkative. Along the way, they chattered nonstop. Even the shameless Fatso was troubled. What? Jiang Laoda lives here. He sure knows how to enjoy life. The moment they arrived at Calm Heart Lake, Fatso felt uneasy. Swish! Shi Zhang was cultivating on the balcony. When he heard the commotion, he opened his eyes immediately, and a cold glint shot out. The youth hurriedly said, Elder Shi, they are Jiang Haoqian's friends. I specially brought them here. Shi Zhang got up and jumped down, crossing the bridge. Greetings, Elder Shi. Fatso and Dong Yin hurriedly bowed. Shi Zhang asked, Why are you looking for Jiang Haoqian? Fatso said, We can't stay in the Danwang Hall anymore, so we're here to seek refuge with Jiang Laoda. Seek refuge? Lu Hong was stunned, and the uneasiness in her heart grew stronger. Shi Zhang looked at the two of them and waved to the youth. You can leave. Yes. The youth bowed and looked at the pavilion unwillingly, then turned and left quickly. He really wanted to see Qin Feiyang. However, to him, This seemed to be an extravagant hope. "Follow me," Shi Zheng said faintly. He led the two of them to the door of the first pavilion. He knocked on the door and shouted, "Jiang Haotian, your friends are here for you." After a while, the door opened and Qin Feiyang walked out. He had been refining pills all day, so even his body had a medicinal fragrance. When he saw Fatso and Dongyin, he couldn't help but be stunned. Fatso laughed and said, "Jiang Lauda, you didn't expect Fat Lord to come to you." "I really didn't expect it." Qin Feiyang was quite puzzled. Why did Fatso and Lu Hong come to him? He turned to look at Shi Zheng and said with a smile, "Elder, they are indeed my friends." "All right, you guys talk." Shi Zheng smiled and returned to the balcony. He continued to cultivate while monitoring the surroundings. "Come in." Qin Feiyang turned and entered the room. He sat on the chair next to the coffee table, pointed to the chair next to him, and said with a smile, "Make yourself at home." On the coffee table, a candle flame flickered, illuminating the small living room. Fatso looked around and said, "Jiang Lauda, this martial imperial hall is really good to you." Lu Hong frowned and turned to close the door. Then she turned to look at Fatso and said in a deep voice, "Damn Fatso, hurry up and tell me the truth. Did you cause some big trouble in the Danwang Hall?" "This," Fatso stammered. Lu Hong's heart skipped a beat and urged, "Hurry up and tell me." Qin Feiyang also frowned. It didn't seem like a good thing to come looking for him in the middle of the night. "It's a big trouble." Fatso lowered his head and said softly, "As expected." Lu Hong stared at Fatso, gnashing her teeth in hatred. Suddenly, Fatso raised his head and grinned at the two of them. He said proudly, "Let me tell you, Fat Lord has successfully robbed the Danwang Hall's herb field and brought you 4 bear paws." "What?" Lu Hong turned pale with fright. Qin Feiyang also stood up and looked at Fatso with a dumbfounded expression. Fatso said with disdain, "Isn't it just robbing the herb field? Is there a need to make such a fuss?" This, Lu Hong pointed angrily at Fatso, so angry that her whole body was trembling. Was robbing the herb field a small matter? One must know that it was the Danwang Hall's herb field. This was simply plucking the fur from a tiger. No, plucking the fur was not enough to describe it. It was simply skinning the tiger. "It's over. It's over." She hung her head weakly and sat on the chair. She hated Fatso and herself to the core. Why did she run out with Fatso in a moment of dizziness? When the Danwang Hall found out that the herb field had been robbed, even if she did not do it, she would not be able to defend herself. That bastard Fatso really got her into trouble. Looking at Lu Hong's reaction, Qin Feiyang knew that this matter had nothing to do with her. But now that she had boarded the pirate ship, it was impossible to get out, because no one would believe her. Looking at Fatso, who was still feeling smug, Qin Feiyang sighed weakly and returned to his seat. He said, "Fatso, although what you did make me feel better, it also brought me a big disaster." Fatso's expression changed, and he hurriedly said, "Boss, Fat Lord robbed these herbs to refine pills for you. You can't just watch him die." Qin Feiyang rubbed his aching forehead and said, "Tell me the whole story." Fatso's saliva immediately splattered everywhere. He was beaming with joy and was extremely proud. After listening, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and remained silent. This matter could be said to be sensational. The consequences were very serious. Right now, he was also physically and mentally exhausted. He really could not think of a good idea. Seeing that Qin Feiyang did not speak for a long time, Fatso's expression also began to change. He asked nervously, "Jiang Lauda, have you thought of a plan?" Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at him. He shook his head and said, "To be honest, no. What other plan could there be? Grand Hall Master, Elder He, and Elder Jia are all experts at the War Emperor level. If they are angry, who can protect us? I think we should leave Yen City before the Danwang Hall notices." Lu Hong said. Fatso said, "Do you think Fat Lord didn't think of escaping Yen City? But there are so many fierce beasts outside. If we go out, we will die." Lu Hong said angrily, "Then why are you doing this? It's fine if you do this. But why do you have to drag me down with you? Do I have a grudge with you in my previous life?" Fatso smiled and said, "Aren't we companions? Of course, we have to share our blessings." "Share your sister. Is this called blessings?" Lu Hong was so angry that she cursed. "Then don't take the pills. I refine in the future." Fatso snorted coldly. Qin Feiyong said, all right, stop quarreling. Things have already happened, and it's impossible to change them. Since we're all grasshoppers on the same rope, then we must work together to resolve this calamity." Lu Hong said, "Anyway, I have no choice. Let's just wait for death." Qin Feiyong asked, "Fatso, did anyone see you when you were robbing the herb field?" Fatso said, "Fat Lord can swear that he didn't." Qin Feiyong said, "All right, the only way now is to deny it. Without evidence, the Danwang Hall won't dare to do anything to you." Fatso rolled his eyes and said with a sinister smile, "Why don't we turn around and say that Elder Jing stole the herbs? Do you think those big shots in the Danwang Hall are stupid? The herb field is an important place in the Danwang Hall. The fact that they let Elder Jing guard it is enough to prove that Elder Jing's character is completely fine. If you do this, it's tantamount to giving away 300 taels of silver." Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him. This method was definitely not going to work. "Boss, your brain is amazing." Fatso gave him a thumbs up and flattered. "You even successfully robbed the Danwang Hall's herb field. Who dares to compare with your brain? Give me the herbs. If they are found on you, and you are found, we will all be finished together." Qin Feiyong said. Fatso took out a chinkuan bag and looked at Qin Feiyong warily. "Boss, you can't take it all for yourself. If he wanted to take it all for himself, he would have killed you already." Lu Hong rolled her eyes. He couldn't even think of this. She really didn't know how he robbed the herb field. Fatso smiled embarrassedly and threw the chinkuan bag to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong directly put it into the castle. This thing was now equivalent to a hot potato. If he kept it on him, it would only bring disaster. Chapter 144. Although the situation was very serious, it was undeniable that it was very satisfying. Qin Feiyong let out a long breath, got up, and said with a smile, "Let's go and roast the bear paws." Fatso and Lu Sheng were shocked. How could he still be in the mood to roast bear paws? Qin Feiyong said with a faint smile, "Didn't you come to persuade me to go back to the Danwang Hall? You have to at least put on an act." Fatso understood and laughed slyly. Lu Hong let out a long sigh of helplessness. Subsequently, the three of them walked out of the attic, found an empty place by the lake, found some dry wood, set up a fire, and leisurely roasted the bear paws. At the same time, Elder Jing, who was rushing back to the Danwang Hall, was full of joy. Although Jiang Haoqian hasn't agreed to go back to the Danwang Hall, that damn fat pig has vowed that there won't be a problem. At that time, I'll take all the credit. That damn fat pig is timid and won't dare to compete with me. At that time, the next elder of law enforcement might really be me. He was immersed in joy as he sped along, unable to extricate himself. However, when he returned to the Danwang Hall and came to the herb field, he was dumbfounded. At this moment, it was as if a basin of bone-chilling ice water was poured over his head. The joy in his heart was instantly extinguished. Panic, fear, anger, all kinds of negative emotions erupted like a volcano, unstoppable. Who did it? He clenched his fists, his whole body and mind trembling. His face was twisted and ferocious, and his eyes were extremely sinister. Who did it? Come out. All of a sudden, he raised his head and roared. The anger that filled him finally exploded. His robes fluttered, his black hair danced, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He was like a mad beast, emitting a monstrous, murderous aura. "What's going on? Old Jing, what are you shouting about?" Several deacon elders nearby rushed over upon hearing the news. How could this be? Where are the herbs? When they saw the empty herb field, their faces suddenly changed. They hurriedly ran into the herb field, but they couldn't find a single herb. "It's all gone? This is the Danwang Hall. Countless years of painstaking effort. Where did it all go? Old Jing, what is going on? Tell us quickly." The deacon elders surrounded Elder Jing and looked at him anxiously. I don't know," Elder Jing said through gritted teeth. "Aren't you guarding the herb field? How can you not know? Did you leave your post without permission?" The deacon elders. Elder angry, 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 angry. The elder raised an eyebrow. One of the deacon elders suddenly spoke. Something's not right. Even if old Jing left his post, no one would dare to infiltrate our Pale Emperor Hall to rob our medicinal gardens. Bang! Hearing this, Elder Jing felt as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue. His whole body exuded a murderous aura. It must be them! They tricked me out of the city and took the opportunity to rob the herb field. Not only did I not notice, but I even happily sent them to the Martial Imperial Hall. How could I be so stupid? I'm a few decades old, but I was fooled by two little bastards. The more Elder Jing thought about it, the angrier he got. In the end, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Old Jing, what happened to you? Are you okay?" A few deacon elders immediately surrounded him and supported him, their faces filled with worry. "Little bastards, I won't let you go. I'll tear you into pieces, crush your bones, and scatter your ashes." Elder Jing seemed to have gone mad. His battle chi surged out and shook off the deacon elders. Carrying a terrifying, ferocious aura, he dashed outside. Whoosh! At this moment, a white and a black figure appeared out of nowhere like a meteor. It was Elder He and Jia He. They stood in the void and scanned the herb field below. Their dark eyes flickered with a shocking cold light. Greetings to the two elders. The deacon elders knelt on one knee and bowed respectfully. "Why is it like this?" Jia He asked. His gaze was as cold as ice. The few of them couldn't help but feel cold all over. One of the deacon elders hurriedly said, "Elder, it was like this when we came. We don't know what's going on." Jia He raised his head and looked at Elder Jing. His old eyes flashed, and he turned into a stream of light. He quickly chased after Elder Jing and stood in front of him. As soon as he saw Jia He, an insoluble fear emerged in Elder Jing's heart. Plop! He hurriedly knelt on the ground and begged, "I was bewitched by a villain. Please spare my life, Elder Jia." "Who did it?" Elder, he flew over with a dark expression and asked. Elder Jing said, "It's that damned fat pig and a female disciple, Lu Hong." "Fat pig?" Elder, he frowned and asked doubtfully, "Are you talking about Situ Tianyu?" "That's right, it's him." Elder Jing nodded. "Impossible, he doesn't have the guts." Jia He shouted resolutely. He had met Fatso a few times, and the impression he gave was that he was weak and timid like a mouse. He definitely wouldn't dare to do such a thing. "No." Elder, he waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "It's very possible." Jia He looked at him with a frown. "Elder," he said, "don't underestimate Fatso just because he's timid. In fact, he's very smart. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken special care of him and let him manage the herb field." Jia He said angrily, "In that case, it's all your fault." Elder, he frowned and said, "I think he's smart. What's wrong with taking care of him?" Forget it. I won't argue with you." Elder, he was a little annoyed. He lowered his head and looked at Elder Jing, asking, "Where are Fatso and Lu Hong now?" "Martial Imperial Hall." Elder Jing said, "Why are they in the Martial Imperial Hall?" Jia He was furious. If they were in the Danwang Hall or somewhere else, he could just send someone to capture them. But if they were in the Martial Imperial Hall, it would be very troublesome. Elder Jing wanted to say something, but hesitated. He was angry and nervous. He didn't dare to tell the truth. Elder, he asked, could it be that they had already ransacked the herb field a long time ago? Where were you at that time? Tell me. Jia Hei's patience was worn out. He took a step forward, and the terrifying might of the War Emperor pounced towards Elder Jing with an earth-shattering force. I was the one who sent them to the Martial Imperial Hall. Elder Jing's face turned pale, and he hurriedly told them everything honestly. After listening, Elder, he and Jia Hei were so angry that they went crazy. The other deacon elders also looked at Elder Jing with disdain. A little brat used a little trick and made you leave your post to find some bullshit bear paw. You even sent them to the Martial Imperial Hall. That's great. My Danwang Hall is really full of talents. If everyone was as smart as you, my Danwang Hall would have been defeated long ago. Bastard, I've never seen someone as stupid as you. You're worse than a pig. With your pathetic IQ, you still want to be the next law enforcement elder? You're simply daydreaming, wishful thinking. The two law enforcement elders did not care about their image at all as they cursed at Elder Jing, spitting saliva everywhere. His lungs were about to explode from anger. Elder Jia, Elder Jing is indeed in the wrong, but now is not the time to pursue the matter. We need to find that fatso as soon as possible and take back those medicinal herbs. A deacon elder bowed and said, This matter, to the Pill Emperor Hall, is a humiliation they will never be able to erase. Not only do I want to take back the medicinal herbs, I also want to kill them. Jia Hei grabbed Elder Jing and soared into the sky, shooting towards the Martial Imperial Hall. His eyes were filled with a bone-piercing, killing intent. Don't spread this matter, lest it becomes a joke. After exhorting the deacon elders, he also flew into the sky and chased after Jia Hei. A few hundred breaths of time. The two of them arrived above the entrance of the Martial Imperial Hall. Without stopping or letting anyone report, they directly barged into the Martial Imperial Hall. The middle-aged man in the reception hall immediately noticed them. He hurriedly ran out of the hall and landed on the roof with a few leaps. When he saw Elder Jia, his expression changed drastically and he bellowed, Elder Jia, flying is prohibited in the Martial King Hall. You are openly provoking my Martial King Hall. Get down here. However, Elder and Jia Hei turned a deaf ear. Whoosh! At this moment, two dazzling figures rushed out from somewhere in the Martial Imperial Hall and blocked in front of Elder and the other two. It was Elder Wan and the beautiful woman. Their expressions were extremely unsightly. Elder and the other two also stopped in the air. They looked at each other, and a cold light shot out from their eyes. Elder Wan shouted, What is the meaning of this? Are you declaring war on the Martial Imperial Hall? We wouldn't dare. Jia Hei sneered and said, I should be the one asking you what is the meaning of this. What are you talking about? Tell me clearly. The beautiful woman took a step forward. Her seemingly frail body emitted a shocking aura that shook the void. Still playing dumb? Elder, he sneered and said, Are Situ Tianyu and Lu Hong in the Martial Imperial Hall right now? Elder Wan and the other two frowned and were puzzled. The middle-aged man rushed over and raised his head to look at the two. He said loudly, Elder Wan, Elder Situ Tianyu and Lu Hong came to find Zhang Haotian not long ago. They should be with him now. Wow, so all of this was planned by that little bastard Zhang Haotian behind the scenes. Jia Hei was furious. He stared at the beautiful woman and the other two and shouted, If you don't hand over Zhang Haotian and the other two, I will raze the Martial Imperial Hall to the ground. I will kill you first. The beautiful woman was emitting a cold aura. She pointed her slender hand in the air, and battle, qi, gushed out from her fingertip. It turned into a raging wave that drowned the void and surged toward Elder, he, and the other two. It was shocking in all directions. Elder, he hurriedly stepped in front of Jia and waved his old hand. A wave of battle chi surged out. Boom! The two forces collided and exploded with a loud bang that shook the heavens and the earth. It seems like the Danwang Hall is planning to ride on the Martial Imperial Hall's head. Chapter 145. Seeing that the beautiful woman was angry, Elder he immediately cupped his hands and said, Elder G, don't be rash. Let me finish. You've already threatened to raise my Martial Imperial Hall to the ground. What else is there to say? Come, old dog Jia, let me see how capable you are to dare to be so rampant in my Martial Imperial Hall. The beautiful woman was truly angry. At the same time, Elder Wan took a step forward and landed beside the beautiful woman. His aura broke out of his body and rushed towards Elder He and the other two. That pair of eyes was like a pair of eagle eyes, extremely sharp. A great battle was about to begin. The aura of the four of them was too strong. Every corner of the Martial Imperial Hall could clearly feel it. Qin Feiyang and the other two were no exception. Fatso said, Looks like they're going to fight. Shi Zheng jumped down from the balcony and landed beside the three of them. He looked at Fatso and said, Are you happy that they're fighting? Fatso hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, definitely not. Shi Zheng frowned. What kind of a moral thing did you guys do? You actually made the Danwang Hall so angry? We didn't do anything. I was just wondering about it. Fatso pretended to be innocent. Boom! Suddenly, two earth-shaking explosions rang out. In the sky, Elder Wan, the beautiful woman, Elder He, and Jia He charged towards each other at the same time. A shocking battle quickly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. As for Elder Jing, it was still Jia He who carried him. Because of this, Jia He had suffered a great loss at the hands of the beautiful woman from the beginning. Jiang Haoyan, what should we do? Lu Hong's heart was burning with anxiety. She never thought that this matter would trigger a war emperor's battle. Qin Feiyang looked at the four of them in silence. No one knew what he was thinking. Elder, he was also getting more and more anxious. If this continued, someone would definitely die. Why was this Jia He so impatient? Last time, he wanted Jiang Haoyan to hand over the nether devil flame. Now it was the same. If he hadn't said that he was going to raise the Martial Imperial Hall to the ground, wouldn't these things not have happened? Boom! His palm collided with Elder Wan's, and both of them retreated 30 feet. Elder Wan sneered, not bad. After all these years, your strength has improved quite a bit. Elder, he let out a sigh and said, Old Wan, we're not here to target the Martial Emperor Hall. Cut the crap! Elder Wan snorted coldly as he stepped forward and threw a punch at Elder He's face. Old man Wan, can you let me finish? Elder, he felt helpless and angry. But Elder Wan didn't listen at all. The two of them clashed again. Their battle chi was like a rainbow illuminating this world. Elder Wan, Elder Ji, please stop what you're doing. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's voice echoed in the sky. This matter could not be blown out of proportion, because the bigger it was, the more disadvantageous it would be for him, Fatso and Lu Hong. The reason was the Martial Imperial Hall. Now that the Martial Imperial Hall was at war with the Danwang Hall for him. When the truth was revealed one day, the Danwang Hall would definitely use it as a pretext to make a fuss. They might even tell the world that all of this was instigated by the Martial Imperial Hall. At that time, the Martial Imperial Hall would be in a very awkward situation. In order to get out of this situation, the Martial Imperial Hall had no choice but to make a choice, and the only choice was to abandon him. The beautiful woman and Elder Wan frowned slightly, looked at each other, and retreated at the same time. Elder He and Elder Ji also stopped and lowered their heads to look in the direction of the voice. What? They're still roasting bear paws? Are they celebrating? Jia He was furious once again. These little bastards were simply looking down on him and the Pill Emperor Hall in the most naked manner possible. Elder, he quickly grabbed him and shouted, "From now on, you're not allowed to say another word, and you're not allowed to do anything out of line." Jia He said angrily, "Didn't you see that they were the ones who provoked us first?" Elder, he said in a low voice, "No matter what, this is the Martial Imperial Hall. If you don't want to start a war between the two halls, you'd better stop." Humph. Jia He snorted and did not say another word, but the murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger. Qin Feiyang looked at the two and said calmly, Elder Jia, I don't know why you're so angry, but since you're here for me, come down and talk." As for Elder Jing, he ignored him. "All right, we'll talk face to face." Elder, he nodded and dove down from the sky like a meteor. In a few blinks of an eye, he landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Shi Zhang immediately stepped forward and protected Qin Feiyang behind him. Whoosh! The beautiful woman, Elder Wan, and Jia He landed one after another with Elder Jing in his hand. Greetings to the two elders. Fatso and Lu Hong bowed. However, they did not step forward and stood beside Qin Feiyang. This was because they knew very well that as soon as they got close to Elder He and the others, they would be caught by the three. By then, it would be impossible for them to escape. "You still have the nerve to stand and talk to us? Kneel down immediately." Elder Jing shouted. "Why kneel down?" Fatso looked puzzled. "Bastard." Elder Jing was furious and took a step toward the two of them. However, at this moment, Elder He frowned and said, "Stand aside and don't move." Elder Jing was stunned and hurriedly said, "Elder, they—" "All right, I know what I'm doing." Elder, he said impatiently. He looked at Fatso and said, "Let me ask you, since you entered the Danwang Hall, how have I treated you?" Fatso said, "Very well." Elder, he said in a deep voice, "Then why did you steal the medicinal herbs in the herb field?" "Medicinal herbs? What medicinal herbs did we steal?" Fatso looked confused. Seeing that Lu Hong still hadn't reacted, Fatty hurriedly tugged at her sleeve. Because the two of them were close to each other, no one noticed this small action. Lu Hong also immediately showed a puzzled look. Seeing their expressions, Elder Jing's head immediately emitted smoke as he shouted, "Are you still playing dumb? If the medicinal herbs in the herb field were not robbed by you, then who was it? The herb field of the Danwang Hall was robbed?" Elder Wan and the beautiful woman looked at each other, their eyes full of disbelief. At this moment, Fatso's face was full of panic. He said, "Why would this disciple and Lu Hong rob the herb field?" "Elder Jing, you can't say this carelessly. After all, this is a serious crime." "What? I'm speaking carelessly." Elder Jing was so angry that one Buddha left his body and two Buddhas ascended to heaven. Fatso secretly sneered and turned to Elder He and the beautiful woman. He said respectfully, "Elders, this disciple and Lu Hong came to the Martial Imperial Hall to persuade Jiang Haoyan to return to the Danwang Hall." Lu Hong nodded and said, "This point Elder Jing can testify because he personally sent us here. But what medicinal herbs are gone, this disciple really doesn't know. I asked the two elders to investigate clearly." Elder, he did not say a word. He stared at Fatso and the beautiful woman as if he wanted to see through them. "The evidence is conclusive, and you still dare to quibble. Speak, did you give the medicinal herbs to Jiang Haoyan?" However, Elder Jing could not bear it anymore. If they were not in the Martial Imperial Hall, if Elder Wan and the beautiful woman were not present, he would have killed them directly. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Elder Jing of the Danwang Hall, right? Although you're stronger than me, it doesn't mean that you can slander others." "You're saying that I'm slandering others?" Elder Jing was so angry that he laughed. His eyes suddenly became incomparably sharp, like a blade. He shouted, "I think you're a nest of snakes and rats. You're all ungrateful animals. Don't make it sound so dignified. The Pill Halls, Luo Xiong, and the others have helped me. This is the truth. However, your Danwang Hall is simply a joke. Don't embarrass yourself here." Qin Feiyang did not hide his ridicule and said, "I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Since you said that the evidence is conclusive, then take it out for everyone to see." Elder Jing wanted to say something, but he did not know what to say. "What? You can't take it out?" Qin Feiyang slightly raised the corner of his mouth and asked, "Fatso, who's the important person guarding the herb field?" Fatso said, "It's Elder Jing." Qin Feiyang laughed and said, "Elder Jing, you neglected your duty and lost the herbs. You should bravely take responsibility. Don't be like an incompetent trash who only knows how to shirk responsibility. Little bastard, I'm going to kill you." Elder Jing was mad. He completely lost his mind and pounced towards Qin Feiyang. "Get lost!" The beautiful woman coldly shouted and kicked Elder Jing away. With a thud, he fell into the lake behind and became a duck in the water. Jia He clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. The beautiful woman smiled disdainfully and said, "If you don't take care of that dog, don't blame me for being impolite." Elder Jing swam ashore in a sorry state and ran behind Jia He. He stared at Qin Feiyang. If looks could kill, he did not know how many times he would have died. At this time, Elder He, who had been looking at Fatso and didn't speak for a long time, finally opened his golden mouth. "Since it's not you who did it, why are you so panicked?" "Of course I'm panicked. That's a herb field. It's such a big matter. Anyone would be flustered if they were wrongly accused." Fatso's face was full of grievance. What he said was reasonable and did not give anyone a chance to refute. "Elder," he said, "then give me your Qinkuan bag." Fatso said with a bitter face, "Elder, this disciple really didn't steal the herbs. Why don't you believe me? This disciple suspects that it might have been stolen by Shuiyang." "Nonsense!" Elder Jing coldly snorted. Fatso said, "Elder Jing, this disciple is not talking nonsense. Shuiyang has been borrowing money everywhere these days, but who would be willing to lend him such a large sum of 2 million? So he is very likely. He was prepared to make up a bunch of nonsense to disturb Elder He's judgment. However, Elder He did not believe him at all. Before he finished, his old face sank and shouted, "Didn't you hear? Do you need me to say it again? Okay, I'll give it to you." Fatso took out his Qinkuan bag and threw it over. Lu Hong also threw her Qinkuan bag over. Elder He looked carefully and could not help but frown. Just now, when he saw Fatso talking nonsense, he thought that Fatso was guilty. But now that he checked, there was no large amount of herbs in their Qinkuan bags. Chapter 146. You want to check my Qinkuan bag? It's not that easy. How about this? If there is, I'll let you do whatever you want. But if there isn't, I don't need you to apologize to me. Just give me 10 portions of herbs for the red glaze elixir." Qin Feiyang said calmly, but it seemed that his words were blunt and empty. Elder Wan and the others' faces twitched. This little bastard really knew how to take advantage of the situation. Elder He's eyes darkened slightly. He scrutinized Qin Feiyang for a moment and found that Qin Feiyang seemed to be a little guilty. He immediately judged that this boy must be pretending to be calm. He sneered and said, "Today I'm going to check your Qinkuan bag. If there really isn't anything, I'll send someone to give you 10 portions of herbs for the red glaze elixir." "Are you sure?" Qin Feiyang frowned. His guilty conscience was more obvious, and he was even a little flustered. "I'm sure." Elder, he enunciated each word clearly and firmly. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Wan and Elder Wan. He cupped his hands and said, "Seniors, I hope you can be my witness. Gladly. Elder One nodded. In fact, they also wanted to know if this little bastard was the one who planned to rob the Danwang Hall's herb fields. Qin Feiyong smiled. Without hesitation, he took out Chang Shui from his Qinkuan bag and threw it to Elder He. Elder He caught the Qinkuan bag and checked it briefly. He took out a piece of paper and frowned. Who gave you the recipe for the red glaze elixir? Qin Feiyong said calmly, I refuse to answer questions that have nothing to do with herbs. Elder He's eyes flashed coldly as he continued to check. Not long after, he then took out another Cosmos sack from his Cosmos sack. This Qinkuan bag was given to Qin Feiyong by Lin Han. Elder, he said in a low voice, there are at least 4 to 5 million gold coins in there. You're just a martial master. How could you have so much wealth? Elder Jing said, is there even a need to say it? He must have stolen our medicinal herbs and sold them off. Shi Zhang sneered, what a bunch of nonsense. These gold coins were given to Zhang Haoyan by Lin Han. I was there at the time and saw it with my own eyes. Lin Han actually gave him so many gold coins? Elder Wan and the beautiful woman looked at each other in disbelief. Alas, Fatso and Lu Hong have only been in the martial imperial palace for about an hour. Even if we stole the medicinal herbs, we wouldn't be able to sell them in such a short time. You can't even figure this out? I'm really worried about your IQ. Qin Feiyong sighed deeply and looked at Elder He and Elder He with disdain. Elder He said, don't be arrogant too early. Very soon, he also found many medicinal herbs in the Qinkuan bag. He sneered and said, there are at least several 100,000 medicinal herbs in here. How do you explain that? Actually, a portion of these medicinal herbs were obtained by Qin Feiyong when he looted the Black Bear City, Lord's Mansion's treasury. The other portion was the 10,000 healing pills and 10,000 bone replenishing pills that he'd bought from the treasure pavilion in the afternoon. And obviously, Elder, he thought that these medicinal herbs were looted from the medicinal field. Jia He and Elder Jing could not help but sneer, thinking that they had found something to use against him. However, Qin Feiyong was not nervous at all. He waved his hand and said, come, come, bring out all those medicinal herbs. Let's see what other tricks you can play. Elder, he sneered, took a few steps back and poured out a large pile of medicinal herbs. They were piled up together like a small mountain, glowing with colorful light and emitting a fragrance. Qin Feiyong walked forward, grabbed a stalk of medicinal herb, and said indifferently, all of you open your eyes wide and look carefully at the soil of their roots. Does it look like it was just picked from the medicinal field? His words woke the dreamer up. Elder, he immediately realized that he had made the lowest level of mistake. Medicinal herbs absorb the essence of heaven and earth to grow. Whether it was cultivated in the soil or stored in the Qinkuan bag, it basically would not wither or rot. In other words, this pile of medicinal herbs looked no different from when they were just pulled out from the medicinal field. But there was one place that could easily be judged when they were pulled out. That was the soil on the roots. The soil of medicinal herbs that had just been pulled out of the soil must be fresh. But the soil on the roots of this pile of medicinal herbs was almost completely fallen off, without the slightest bit of moisture. It was enough to see that these medicinal herbs had been pulled out of the soil for a long time, and the medicinal field of the Danwang Hall was only looted more than 2 hours ago. Obviously, these were not medicinal herbs from the medicinal field. Moreover, the soil could not have been dried by the alchemy fire, because medicinal herbs would wither once they encountered the alchemy fire. At this moment, the faces of Elder He and the other two were extremely ugly. This was basic knowledge. Even an idiot would be able to think of it, but they had completely ignored it. It was simply too embarrassing. Qin Feiyong said lightly, "How is it? Now you still dare to say that these medicinal herbs are yours?" The beautiful woman laughed and said, "This is probably the most ridiculous thing in the world." The three of them had never been as embarrassed as they were now. Their old faces were boiling red, and they could not wait to find a hole to hide in. Qin Feiyang said, "Are you done with the inspection?" Elder He's face was gloomy. He carefully inspected it again, and with a belly full of unwillingness, he threw the Qinkuan bag to Qin Feiyang. After Qin Feiyang took away all the medicinal herbs, he asked with a smile, "Excuse me, do you still want to search me?" Elder He gritted his teeth and said, "Don't you go too far!" "Did I?" Qin Feiyang looked innocent. Elder He gnashed his teeth and said in a deep voice, "If I remember correctly, you still have a place to hide." Qin Feiyang's heart trembled, and he nodded and said, "No problem. I'll let you search, but this time it's not just 10 sets of medicinal herbs for the Scarlet Fire colored glass pill, but 20 sets." Although he agreed very straightforwardly, he looked a little guilty. Seeing this, Elder He's eyes were gloomy to the extreme. Now he finally understood. Qin Feiyang's previous guilty conscience was simply an act. It was a trap for him. In order to get the medicinal herbs for the Scarlet Fire colored glass pill from him, I can't let him succeed again, or I will lose 30 sets of medicinal herbs. He thought that Qin Feiyang was pretending again, so he decisively gave up checking the castle. In fact, those medicinal herbs were in the castle. This was Qin Feiyang's brilliance. Truth and falsehood, falsehood and falsehood, completely messed up his judgment. He also realized that today's trip would definitely not have a result, because there was no evidence, no matter how much he said it was useless. On the contrary, he would only become a clown. He didn't want to continue to lose face in the martial imperial hall. "Jiang Haotian, the future is long, let's wait and see." After an undisguised threat, he glanced at Fatso and Lu Hong and shouted, "You two immediately follow me back to the Danwang Hall." Then he turned around and was ready to leave. However, Fatso didn't follow at all. He took out his identity token and sneered, "Sorry, Fat Lord is now officially out of the Danwang Hall. You masters, Fat Lord can't serve you, and I don't want to serve you." Elder He stopped, turned around and looked at Fatso gloomily and said, "What did you say?" "Say it again." In order to persuade Jiang Haotian, Fat Lord can be said to have done his best. But what about you? Not only did you not reward Fat Lord, but you also slandered Fat Lord. You people, Fat Lord really can't afford to offend you. So, Fat Lord, you better know your place and get out of here." After saying that, Fatso clenched his fist, and with a crack, the identity token was crushed into pieces. Elder He, Jia He, and Elder Jing's eyes became extremely terrifying as the identity token was crushed. It was a murderous look. "I'll also leave the Danwang Hall." Lu Hong struggled for a moment, then took out her identity token and crushed it. She had no choice. If she returned to the Danwang Hall, she would definitely be tortured and interrogated, and the only outcome would be death. Although leaving the Danwang Hall would anger these people, at least she had a chance to live. This action of the two people infuriated the other three quite badly. If it weren't for Elder Wan and the beautiful woman beside them, they would have killed them on the spot. Fatso and Jia He were a little scared, and they hid behind Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was the only person they could rely on in Yen City. Qin Feiyang felt bitter. Elder He and the other two would definitely misunderstand and think that he was the one who instigated Fatso and Jia He to leave the Danwang Hall. Cough! He coughed dryly and smiled. "Seniors, although we haven't found the culprit who robbed the herb field, the misunderstanding between us has been resolved. Why don't you stay and eat bear paws to celebrate?" Uft! Elder Jing spat out another mouthful of blood. Ouch! Qin Feiyang's expression changed, and he hurriedly said, "Why are you spitting blood? Come, come, come. Quickly eat a bear paw to replenish your strength. After all, you worked hard to get this." "Jiang, how? Tian. Elder Jing said each word slowly, and he was about to lose control of his temper. Let's go. Elder, he glanced coldly at Qin Feiyang and the other two, and with a heart full of anger, he turned into a stream of light and flew away. Jia He carried Elder Jing and followed closely behind. Elder He, remember to send the herbs for the 10 sets of red fire colored glass pellets as soon as possible. Qin Feiyang shouted. Elder He's old body trembled, and he said in a low voice, Old Jia, when you go back, immediately send someone in disguise to monitor the Martial Imperial Hall. Once they leave the Martial Imperial Hall, find a chance to kill them. Okay. Jia He nodded, and killing intent flashed in his old eyes. Then, the 3 of them quickly disappeared into the night sky without saying a word. Phew! Qin Feiyang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, the crisis was resolved. Elder Wan retracted his gaze and frowned. Tell me honestly, did you rob the herb field of the Danwang Hall? We really didn't. Fatso shook his head with an innocent face. Elder Wan looked at the 3 of them and said with a smile, As long as you really didn't do it, you can stay in the Martial Imperial Hall. Thank you, Elder Wan. Lu Hong hurriedly bowed and thanked him. If the people of the Danwang Hall were as good as you, Elder Wan, we wouldn't have come to this. Fatso shook his head and sighed and flattered Elder Wan. Elder Wan shook his head and laughed, and warned the 2, this old man won't fall for your tricks. Although you can stay in the Martial Imperial Hall, you can't act recklessly. Otherwise, this old man will drive you out. Absolutely not. Fatso immediately patted his chest and promised. Seeing the fatty's expression, Lu Hong's heart was filled with anger. She couldn't help but want to go up and slap the fatty. Chapter 147. Qin Feiyang glanced at the solemn Fatso and couldn't help laughing secretly. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He took out a palm-sized iron box from his arms and opened the lid. 15 supreme-grade red fire-colored glass pills suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Immediately, Lu Hong's eyes lit up, and she was very eager. Qin Feiyang took out 6 pills and handed them to Elder Wan and the beautiful woman. The 2 were stunned. Wasn't it 50-50? They should be given 3 pills. But now, how could he give them 6 supreme-grade red fire-colored glass pills? Thank you, seniors, for helping us out just now. Qin Feiyang said gratefully, although Elder He and the other 2 had no evidence of them robbing the medicinal field. If Elder Wan and the beautiful woman were not present today, he, Fatso, and Lu Hong would still be finished. Hearing this, Elder Wan and the other 2 finally understood. The beautiful woman pursed her lips and smiled. I didn't expect you to know how to repay kindness. Qin Feiyang was helpless. It seemed that he had repaid those who had helped him, right? For example, Zhao Shuang, and Luo Qingzhu, who had helped him in Black Bear City. He had also given them 2 perfect martial arts. As for Luo Xiong, Feng Cheng, and Elder Amo, there was no chance now. When there was a chance in the future, he would also thank the 3 of them properly. The beautiful woman shook her head and smiled. Okay, don't look wronged. I was just joking. We'll take the pills. You're on your own. Don't provoke the Danwang Hall again. Okay. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 nodded. Putting away the iron box, Qin Feiyang said with a smile, Seniors, these 4 bear paws are all fresh. Why don't you leave some to eat? Elder Wan's face twitched. These days it was really comfortable. The 2 of them were of high status and noble status. Naturally, it was impossible for them to really stay and eat bear paws. After saying a few words to the 3, he flew away. Shi Zheng did not join in the fun and returned to the balcony to continue cultivating. As soon as Shi Zheng left, Qin Feiyang's face sank. He said in a low voice, The Danwang Hall will definitely not let this matter rest. In the future, it's best if you don't leave the Martial Imperial Hall alone. Are we going to hide like this forever? Lu Hong was a little hesitant. Qin Feiyong said, if you don't want to hide, then work hard to cultivate. When your strength reaches their level, who can do anything to you? Alas! Lu Hong sighed softly. She sat by the fire and lowered her head in silence. Qin Feiyong glanced at her, then looked at Fatso and said, I'm warning you now, don't mess around in the Martial Imperial Palace. Otherwise, we won't have a place to stay in Yen City. Fat Lord knows. Fatso nodded and said with some lingering fear, just now, old dog, he wanted to check the ancient castle. I'm afraid that Fatso was badly frightened. Qinkuan bags can be hidden everywhere. He won't dare to take the risk. Qin Feiyong sneered. Fatso asked, then, do you think he'll really send the 10 sets of red flame-colored glass pellets here? Qin Feiyong shook his head. As a dignified elder of the Pale Emperor Hall, as well as a combat emperor, it's impossible for him to renege on his debt. He wouldn't be able to afford to lose face like this. After you guys finish eating the bear paw, do me a favor. Lu Hong sighed. I'm not in the mood to eat bear paws. Tell me, what favor? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, there are too many things in my Qinkuan bag. I haven't had the time to organize them. Help me count them later. No problem. Also organize those herbs. Fatso smiled evilly. He grabbed a bear paw and ate it with relish. His mouth was greasy. You can eat so much. No wonder you're so fat. Lu Hong looked at him with disdain and turned to look at Qin Feiyong. She seemed to have something to say, but she didn't know how to say it. Qin Feiyong saw through her thoughts at a glance and said lightly, I will consider giving you the best red flame-colored glass pellet. Thank you. Lu Hong was overjoyed and hurriedly thanked him. Although it wasn't confirmed yet, there was still hope. Qin Feiyong couldn't give it to her now. After all, this woman still didn't know his true identity, let alone her reaction after knowing his true identity. So, he needed to observe carefully. He didn't want to cultivate a future enemy. After eating a few pieces of bear paw meat, Qin Feiyong took the remaining bear paw and led Fatso into the attic and then into the castle. Wolf King had always been thinking about the bear paw. As soon as Qin Feiyong entered the castle, it got up and held it in its mouth, lying on the side and eating with relish. That morning, Elder, he asked someone to send 10 sets of red flame-colored glass pellets, medicinal materials. Qin Feiyong also immediately refined the elixir. In this way, plus the 9 that he already had, there were a total of 19. Even if he deducted the 5 from the treasure pavilion, there were still 14. At the same time, Fatso and Lu Hong also tidied up their Qinkuan bags. Knowing the result, Qin Feiyong was extremely excited. There were more than 2 million gold coins, all kinds of medicinal materials added together. There were more than 500,000 stocks. Of course, the medicinal materials of the 10,000 sets of healing pills and bone replenishing pills were not included. Otherwise, there would be more. As for the weapons, elixirs, and so on that were plundered from the treasury under the city lord's mansion, the number was also quite astonishing. Next, Fatso and Lu Hong went outside to cultivate. Qin Feiyong refined 1,000 healing pills, 1,000 bone replenishing pills, and continued to copy the return formula. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. Early in the morning, there was a sea of people in front of the gate of the Martial Imperial Hall. The sound of discussion was overwhelming. They naturally came to line up to receive the elixir. In order to line up at the front, some people came yesterday. There were people from all walks of life. The disciples of the Martial Imperial Hall, the disciples of the Lin family, the people of other families, the people of the palace, the waiters of the restaurant, and so on. At first, it was very calm. Everyone waited in line. But as the number of people increased, disputes also began. Although, due to the rules of Yen City, They did not dare to fight openly, but some dishonest people, relying on their strength, threatened and forced to cut the line. As a last resort, the middle-aged man stationed in the reception hall could only stand up to maintain order. This action puzzled all the tycoons in Swallow City. They did not understand what exactly was Qin Feiyang selling in the gourd. So, the spies of various forces were mixed in the crowd, inquiring about the news. Dozens of meters away, two middle-aged men in tattered clothes, with disheveled hair and dirty faces, stood under a big tree, looking at the gate of the martial imperial hall from afar. Their eyes flashed coldly. When the sun rose, a man and a woman walked out of the martial imperial hall. But it was not Qin Feiyang. It was Fatso and Lu Hong. "Greetings, Elder Chu." The two stopped beside the middle-aged man and bowed. "Hurry up and send them away." Elder Chu waved his hand impatiently. The two nodded and turned to look at the crowd. Lu Hong took out a chinquin bag and handed it to Fatso. The place instantly quieted down. Fatso held the chinquin bag high, glanced at the crowd one by one, and was about to speak. Suddenly, he seemed to have noticed something and looked at a certain place. It was the two middle-aged men under the big tree. But after a quick glance, he looked away, but a flash of light flashed in his eyes. At first, he glanced at them and found that the two were a little strange. Although they were dressed in tattered clothes, they gave people the illusion that they were cranes in a flock of chickens. So he took a special look again. With this look, he found something fishy. The two were actually avoiding his eyes. They seemed to have a guilty conscience. And the most obvious point, everyone present was here for the elixir. When they saw Lu Hong take out the chinquin bag, they were very excited. But the two men, let alone being excited, didn't have any expression on their dirty faces. Obviously, it didn't make sense. Fatso whispered, "Lu Hong, be careful of the two men under the tree." Lu Hong glanced at the two men intentionally and said, "You suspect that there's something wrong with them?" "I don't know if there's anything wrong, but it's always good to be cautious," Fatso whispered. Lu Hong nodded imperceptibly and secretly paid attention to it. Although Fatso was a little despicable, his eyesight was quite accurate. Fatso smiled and said, "I believe that Fat Lord doesn't need to say what's in the chinquin bag. Everyone knows. Now, all of you prick up your ears and listen to Fat Lord clearly. Everyone will get one. Don't fight and don't cut in line. Otherwise, you won't get anything. Those who get the elixir, remember to thank my Jiang Laoda. Those who didn't get the elixir today, don't be discouraged. There will be another chance next time. It's starting." As soon as Fatso finished speaking, the person standing at the front quickly ran over and said with a flattering smile, "Fat Lord, I want a healing elixir. Come and get the healing elixir for me." Lu Hong took out another chinquin bag, took out an elixir, and handed it to the person. There are elixir patterns and it's shining. It's really a supreme grade elixir. That person ran away excitedly as if he had found a treasure. Hearing that, everyone's hearts were burning and they couldn't wait to run over. At the same time, the two middle-aged men under the tree blended into the crowd and gradually approached the fatty and the young man. Fatso was paying attention to them at all times. His eyes suddenly widened as he shouted, "What are you two trying to do?" "Line up at the back." The two of them stopped in their tracks. A sharp light flashed in their eyes as they retreated to the back of the line. "There really is a problem," Fatso sneered secretly. Half an hour later, the 2,000 elixirs had finally been distributed, and now it was the two middle-aged men's turn. Fatso shook his chinquin bag, grinned at the two of them, and said, "You too, I'm sorry, but please come earlier next time." The two of them looked at each other, killing intent surging in their eyes. Boom! Next, they punched towards Fatso and Lu Hong. On their fists, there was actually a layer of battle chi. At such a close distance, they thought that they would be able to capture them easily. However, just as they were about to make their move, Fatso and Lu Hong retreated at the same time. Your sister, you're actually a war king. Fatso roared, his face pale. After missing their target, the two men's eyes darkened and they quickly pounced again. Elder Chu raised his eyebrows and reacted. He hurriedly stepped in front of Fatso and Lu Hong and clenched his fists. He was too hasty and didn't even have time to activate his battle chi before he fiercely collided with the two men. Bang! Thump! Elder Chu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face instantly turned pale. Who are you? You actually dare to come to my martial imperial palace to kill people? Chapter 148. The situation was bad. The two of them turned around decisively, and with a few leaps, they landed at the back of the crowd and fled without looking back. You want to leave? Not so easy. Elder Chu was furious and chased after them with a torrential aura. Fatso patted his chest and said with lingering fear, that was close. Thankfully, we discovered that they were up to no good and were on our guard. Otherwise, we would have been dead this time. Lu Hong was shocked as well. Fatso frowned. Why isn't Manager Li of Precious Treasure Pavilion here, yet? Lu Hong said, I don't feel safe staying here. We should hurry back. If Manager Li doesn't see us when he arrives, he'll naturally head to Soothing Lake. That's good too. Fatso nodded. However, just as they turned around, two men in black suddenly leaped out from the crowd, each holding a 3-foot-long sword that shone coldly as they stabbed towards the backs of the two of them. There's more. Fatso and Elder Chu's expressions changed. It was not one group of people, it was two groups of people. The swords pierced their backs. The two of them could not dodge at all. Sure. At that critical moment, two resplendent battle chis tore through the air like lightning and entered the back of the heads of the two men in black. Accompanied by a tragic cry, the two of them fell into a pool of blood on the spot. Fatso and Elder Chu were shocked. They turned around hurriedly and saw a white-haired old man flying over from the void. Looking at the two men in black, they were already dead. The two of them exchanged glances, their eyes filled with fear and their bodies drenched in cold sweat. The fatty walked over and flipped the two people over. They were also middle-aged men, but their faces were very unfamiliar. He had never seen them before. The white-haired old man landed opposite Fatso and Elder Chu like a divine light. Fatso asked hurriedly, Senior, are you Manager Li of Precious Treasure Pavilion? That's right. Manager Li nodded. Fatso complained, Why are you only here now? We've been waiting for so long and we were almost killed. I'm sorry, I've been too busy recently. If it weren't for my subordinate reminding me just now, I would have forgotten about it. Manager Li had an apologetic look on his face. He did not put on any airs of a battle emperor. He was very humble and easygoing. Forget? Fatso was speechless. Manager Li lowered his head and glanced at the two men in black. He immediately frowned. Fatso asked, Senior, do you know him? Never seen him before. Manager Li shook his head. Even you haven't seen him before? Fatso was surprised. Steward Li shook his head and smiled. There are millions of people in Swallow City. How can this old man have the time to get to know each and every one of them? Moreover, these two people are only martial arts great masters. At this moment, when Elder Chu returned, his face was filled with anger. When he saw Steward Li, he hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Steward Li, without waiting for Manager Li to respond. He then looked at the two men in black and asked in surprise, What's going on here? Fatso said, They also came to assassinate us. Fortunately, Manager Li came in time and saved our lives. Bastard. Elder Chu was furious. Lu Hong asked, Elder Chu, where are the two battle kings? We didn't catch up and didn't see their faces clearly. Elder Chu was a little angry. Then do you know them? Fatso pointed at the two men lying on the ground. Elder Chu looked at the two men and tried hard to recall for a moment. He shook his head and said, "I don't remember, but you should have guessed which faction they belonged to, right?" Fatso sneered. "Who else could it be other than the Danwang Hall?" Manager Li shook his head and said, "No, even if the Danwang Hall sent people to kill you, they wouldn't send two groups of people, let alone two martial arts great masters to die." "Senior, do you mean that they are not in the same group?" Lu Hong was surprised. Manager Li said, "They are definitely not in the same group, but as for which faction they belong to, I don't dare to jump to conclusions." "Right, where is that brat, Jiang Haotian?" Fatso laughed and said, "Jiang Laoda is in seclusion and asked us to send the pills to you. Jiang Laoda also asked me to ask you, how much is one image crystal?" This Manager Li thought for a while and asked, "How much does he want?" "5, Fatso said. "So much?" Manager Li was dumbfounded. He smiled bitterly and said, "He wants 5 at once. He really has too much money and nowhere to spend it." Fatty said proudly, My boss doesn't have much now, but he has a lot of money." Manager Li was stunned. He then shook his head and laughed, saying, "How about this? Since we are so close, I won't ask for a sky-high price. For one image crystal, I will sell it to him for 5 million gold coins." "What?" Fatso staggered in shock. 5 million for one? So expensive? 5. Wouldn't that be 25 million gold coins? Lu Hong was also dumbfounded. Although they all knew that image crystals were expensive, they didn't expect it to be so expensive. 25 million gold coins. For that brat Jiang Haotian shouldn't be much, right? Manager Li said with a smile. Fatso's face twitched, and he said with a smile, "This may be a little difficult. Can it be cheaper?" "No. 5 million is already a friendship price. If it is cheaper, I will lose money." Manager Li shook his head. Lu Hong asked, "How much can a top-grade red fire glass pill be sold for?" This Manager Li thought for a while and shook his head. "It hasn't been auctioned, so I don't know for the time being. But the price is definitely not cheap." Lu Hong took out an iron box and handed it to Manager Li. She smiled faintly and said, "There are 10 top-grade scarlet fire colored glass pills here. 5 of them are yours. As for the other 5, Jiang Haotian hopes that you can help auction them off." Manager Li received the iron box hurriedly and opened it. Instantly his old eyes shone brightly. Lu Hong said, "Jiang Haotian also said that he can exchange them for image crystals after the auction." Manager Li smiled. "No problem. I'll arrange it in the next couple of days." As they conversed, Elder Chu squatted on the ground and searched the bodies of the 2 people. All of a sudden, his eyes were filled with shock as he dug out 2 blood-colored badges from the robes of the 2 people. The front of both badges were engraved with 3 scarlet words, "Blood-killing badge." On the back, there was a menacing skull that looked exceptionally terrifying. When Manager Li noticed it, he said hurriedly, "Hurry, let me take a look." Elder Chu passed it to him hurriedly. Keeping the iron box, Manager Li grabbed the blood-colored badge and looked at it carefully before frowning. "Strange. Why haven't I heard of this blood-killing badge before?" Fatso asked. "Could there be a mysterious faction hidden in Yen County?" "That's impossible. The royal family, Precious Treasure Pavilion, Danwang Hall, and Martial Imperial Palace are all over every corner of Yen County. If there's truly a mysterious faction, they won't be able to escape our eyes. I'll take this badge with me. I'll help you guys investigate it when I have the time." Manager Li smiled. "Thank you, Senior." Fatso and Elder Chu bowed in gratitude. "Sure." Manager Li soared into the air, turning into a streak of light that sped into the distance. Fatso retracted his gaze and looked at the other badge in Elder Chu's hand, smiling. "Elder, can you give me that blood-killing badge? I want to show it to Jiang Lao." The Elder Chu tossed it to him. "After you see it, bring it to Elder Wan and Elder Ji." let them take a look as well. All right. Fatso nodded and took the blood-killing badge. He raised his head and looked at the crowd outside the gate, still in shock. Disperse. We'll come back next month. Fat Lord, can you tell us why Jiang Haoyan is giving us pills for free? Yeah, there's no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Does he have a motive? Someone in the crowd asked. They were the spies of the major factions. The fatty raised his eyebrows and said angrily, You people are really measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Let me tell you, Boss Jiang is purely being kind. If you continue to doubt him, then from now on we will cancel the distribution of pills. As soon as he said that, those who asked questions immediately became the target of public criticism. The others stared at them angrily. Don't cancel it. We were wrong. We won't doubt him anymore. Those people quickly apologized. What a joke. If they doubted Jiang Haoyan, they would be going against the entire city. Even if they had major factions behind them, they wouldn't dare to go against everyone present. Humph. Fatso snorted and turned to leave with Lu Hong. In fact, they didn't know Qin Feiyang's motive. Therefore, the spies of the major factions were destined to return without success. Back at the soothing lake, Lu Hong continued to cultivate. Fatso entered the castle and reported everything to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was also quite surprised when the blood-killing badge was mentioned. He took the badge from Fatso and looked at it repeatedly for a while. But he couldn't find any information about the blood-killing badge in his memory. Qin Feiyang pondered and asked, How was Lu Hong's performance? When she took out the 10 red fire-colored glass pills, Fat Lord didn't see any greed on her face. There should be no problem, Fatso said. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, We can't let down our guard. We have to continue to observe. Leave it to Fat Lord. Fatso patted his chest hard, then rubbed his hands and smiled. Jiang Lauda, didn't you say last time that you would give me a perfect martial skill? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him and said, Go and prepare 2 bamboo slips. Thank you, Jiang Lauda. You are so good to Fat Lord. Fat Lord, give yourself to you. Fatso was overjoyed. Don't. Stay away from me. Qin Feiyang hurriedly pushed him away, goosebumps all over his body. Fatso laughed and took out 2 bamboo slips, pen and ink, and placed them neatly beside the iron book. Qin Feiyang also gave Fatso the martial skills of heart-locking fist and returned to origin steps. After the martial skills, Fatso happily took the blood-killing badge and went to find Elder Wan and the beautiful woman. Blood-killing badge, Danwang Hall. Is there any connection between the two? Qin Feiyang fell into deep thought. Danwang Hall. Meeting hall. 2 middle-aged men stood in front of Jia He, trembling with fear. Jia He stared at the 2 of them angrily, his body full of hostility, and shouted, You are battle kings, and you can't even kill 2 martial masters. Don't you feel ashamed? The 2 of them trembled and hurriedly said, Elder, please give us another chance. We will definitely not fail again. Jia He said, All right, I will give you another chance. If you succeed, you will be the next law enforcement elder. But if you fail, I will kill you. While you are at it, go and investigate the background of the other group of people, he added. Chapter 149. I've finally broken through. In a cultivation room in the Martial Imperial Hall, Ling Yunfei opened his eyes, and 2 beams of light shot out. I remember when we first met in Black Bear City, Qin Feiyang and I were both 4-star martial masters. But now he's already an 8-star martial master. However, as long as I take this top-grade red fire-colored glass pill, I can catch up with him. He muttered to himself, took out a jade box, opened the lid, and a fiery red pill appeared. Without any hesitation, he threw the pill into his mouth. A moment later, His aura rose again and again. In the end, it stopped at an 8-star martial master. Thank you, Qin Feiyong. After muttering to himself, he got up and left the cultivation room. When he came to the door of the cultivation hall, a deacon elder smiled and said, Ling Yunfei, Elder Wan wants you to go to his place after you come out of seclusion. Thank you for telling me. Ling Yunfei cupped his hands and went to the law enforcement hall with a trace of suspicion. The law enforcement hall was the residence of Elder Wan and the beautiful woman. Dong dong! Ling Yunfei stood in front of a door on the second floor and gently knocked on the door. Come in. Elder Wan's voice came from inside. Ling Yunfei pushed the door open and entered. Elder Wan was sitting at the desk, looking down at a blood-colored token. It was the blood-killing token that Fatso sent to him. Seeing that it was Ling Yunfei, he put down the blood-killing token and said with a smile, It's you, close the door. After Ling Yunfei closed the door, he walked to the desk, bowed, and asked, Elder, why are you looking for me? Elder Wan smiled and said, I want to ask you a question. Question? Ling Yunfei was puzzled. Elder Wan said, Is your father called Ling Feng? Ling Yunfei's heart trembled as he asked, Elder, how did you know? Elder Wan smiled and said, This old man saw that you and Ling Feng looked very similar, and both of you are from Black Bear City's Ling family, so I went to ask Ling. Sure enough, she told me that your father is called Ling Feng. Elder, do you know my father? Ling Yunfei was bewildered. Elder Wan nodded his head and smiled. Your father was once a disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall. Furthermore, he was as talented as you. Back then, he was rather outstanding amongst the younger generation. I see. Ling Yunfei suddenly understood. However, he didn't seem to be very surprised. It was as if he already knew all of this. Elder Wan sighed. Yunfei, Ling has already told me about your father's death. As the enforcement elder of the Martial King Hall, I am deeply sorry for not being able to protect my disciples. Ling Yunfei said, Elder's words are too serious. If your father didn't die, I'm afraid he would have already become a war king. To tell you the truth, this old man called you here to ask, did your father tell you anything before he died? Elder Wan asked. My father died before I was even born. Ling Yunfei was a little disappointed. Elder Wan frowned and said, What about your mother? Did she say anything to you? Ling Yunfei shook his head. That's impossible. Elder Wan frowned and waved his hand. You can leave first. Cultivate well and don't let your father down. This disciple will take his leave. Ling Yunfei cupped his hands and turned to leave. After walking out of the door, he turned around to look at the law enforcement hall, and a strange light flashed across his eyes. Then, he went straight to the Calm Heart Lake and saw Fatso and Lu Hong sparring by the lake. He quietly walked over and teased, When did the two of you become so close? The two of them were shocked and turned their heads to look. Fuck, you gave me a fright. Fatso patted his chest and laughed. Ling brat, come, practice with Fat Lord. You. Ling Yunfei looked at Fatso and shook his head. I'm not free. Where's Jiang Haotian? Oh, you're looking down on Fat Lord? Take this. Fatso let out a strange cry. His 5 fingers bent, but when he got close to Ling Yunfei, his 5 bent fingers suddenly clenched into a fist and punched towards Ling Yunfei's chest. Heart lock killing fist. Ling Yunfei's eyes narrowed and hurriedly punched out, and he didn't even use the true qi. Bang! The two of them punched each other, and Fatso's body shook as he retreated. How could this be? Fatso's face was filled with disbelief. You've just practiced the heart lock killing fist, and you haven't even crossed the threshold. What are you showing off for? Ling Yunfei despised him. Fatso snorted unhappily and asked, Has your cultivation become stronger again? I just broke through to 8-star martial master. Ling Yunfei grinned. 8-star martial master? Fatso was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses and said angrily, Bastard, why didn't you say so earlier? You didn't ask. Cut the crap. I'm going to find Jiang Haoyan. You two continue to cultivate your relationship. Ling Yunfei smiled evilly and turned to run to the attic. Cultivate relationship? Fatso and Lu Hong were stunned, then looked at each other at the same time and said disdainfully, You? At the same time they looked away, crossed their arms, and looked unhappy. In the castle, Qin Feiyang imitated the return formula and asked, What's the matter? Yes. Ling Yunfei, who was standing behind him, nodded. Qin Feiyang said, Speak. Ling Yunfei said in a deep voice, Do you still remember that my mother was imprisoned by the Ling family? The reason was that my dead father told my mother something. Qin Feiyang suddenly became interested. He stopped imitating and turned to look at Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei said, My father used to be a disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall. Once he went out alone to train and entered a very strange place. He was seriously injured there, and even his cultivation was crippled. So, you were lying to me before. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. He clearly remembered that Ling Yunfei had told him that his father was seriously injured in the Black Bear Mountain. Ling Yunfei hurriedly said, No, at that time I was also kept in the dark. I only knew the truth after my mother escaped. Qin Feiyang said, Then what is the truth? Back then, after my father escaped from that place, because his cultivation was crippled, he did not return to the Martial Imperial Hall. Instead, he returned to Black Bear City. But on the way back to Black Bear City, because his injuries were too serious, he fainted in front of a village. The people in that village were kind enough to save my father's life. It was when he was recuperating in that village that my father met my mother. My mother was in charge of taking care of him at that time. After a while, they gradually fell in love with each other. Not long after, they got married. However, for some reason, my father's injuries kept repeating and could not be healed. Until one day it began to worsen. Seeing that his health was deteriorating day by day, my father began to worry because he had not given my mother a status. And at that time, my mother was already pregnant with me. My father also wanted to give me a better environment to grow up in. The Black Bear City's Ling family was undoubtedly the first choice. So my father decided to bring my mother back to the Ling family, hoping that the Ling family would take good care of us. But my father did not expect that not only did the Ling family not take care of my mother and me, they even bullied and humiliated us for more than 10 years. Ling Yunfei finished in one breath, his eyes full of hatred. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed inwardly. The fate of this family was truly tragic. He asked, Your second uncle treated you like this because of that strange place? That's right. Because of the long journey, my father's body was very weak. After returning to the Ling family, he passed away that night. On the night of the vigil, my mother was beside my father's coffin and muttered something about that strange place. My second uncle happened to hear it. My second uncle began to interrogate her. But my mother kept her mouth shut. Second uncle was flustered and exasperated. So he imprisoned my mother and announced to the public that my mother had returned to her parents' home. In the end, my mother's family and the other people in the village were also killed by my second uncle because of this matter. Ling Yunfei clenched his fists tightly, his teeth chattering nonstop. Qin Feiyang was somewhat incredulous. What exactly was in that strange place? So much so that Ling Yunfei's second uncle would use such unscrupulous means to get the information out of Lu Ji's mouth. Ling Yunfei said, According to my mother, there are large amounts of treasures in that place, but it is extremely dangerous. Once you enter, you will definitely die. Qin Feiyang asked, Where is that place? Ling Yunfei said, In the extreme north of Starmoon City, there is a desolate desert, and that place is at the end of the desert. Starmoon City, Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, "You told me this because you want to go there." "Yes, I want to go and see what the place that killed my father is like, and what treasures are hidden there." Ling Yunfei nodded, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Then he said, "You have this ancient castle in Changshui. I believe that we should be able to get away safely. Moreover, it is best that we set off immediately." "Why?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Ling Yunfei said in a low voice, "Because Elder One also asked me about this before. I think he also wants to know the location of that place." Even Elder One was asking about it? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be tempted. He asked, "That place, other than your father, who else knows about it?" Ling Yunfei shook his head. "Definitely no one else. Otherwise, Elder One and the others would have already gone there and wouldn't have come to ask me now." Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth and nodded. "All right, we will set off in 5 days." "Why 5 days?" Ling Yunfei didn't understand. Qin Feiyang said, "I want to refine some healing pills and bone replenishing pills, and I have already asked Manager Li to help me buy the image crystal. With the image crystal, it will be much more convenient." "That's true." Ling Yunfei nodded. But now, the biggest problem was getting out of the city. The vicinity of the Martial Imperial Hall was constantly being monitored. Once they walked out of the Martial Imperial Hall, it was equivalent to walking into a grave. Moreover, Shizhang was following them closely. It would be difficult to sneak out. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, "These few days go around and see if there is a shortcut out of the city. Also, find 2 illusion pills just in case." "Okay." Ling Yunfei nodded. Chapter 150. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Qin Feiyang grabbed a chinquan bag and left the castle, feeling a little tired. For 5 days and nights, he refined pills without stopping. In total, he refined 9,000 healing pills and 9,000 bone replenishing pills, a total of 18,000 pills. On average, he refined 1 pill every 20 breaths. For him, this was already his limit. He pushed open the door and walked out of the attic. A gust of cold wind swept over, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. The sky was also filled with a layer of dense clouds. It was now the winter solstice. The weather had gradually turned cold. The cold wind was biting cold, blowing on people's faces like sharp blades, causing pain on their skin. Da-da! Fatso and Lu Hong ran down from the 2nd floor. Both of them had added a thick layer of clothing. Fatso chuckled and said, "Fat Lord thought that someone had broken in. So it's you, boss." Lu Hong walked out of the attic, looked at the hazy sky, and said, "This damn weather." It was quite warm a few days ago, but the temperature suddenly dropped. It will probably start snowing next month. Qin Feiyang smiled. He turned around and entered the room. After closing the door, he handed the chinquan bag to Lu Hong and instructed, "During the time I'm not here, distribute medicinal pills to everyone on time." Letting Lu Hong take care of the pills was actually a test for her. "Okay." Lu Hong nodded and said, "Wait, what do you mean? You're leaving?" Fatso also looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. "Sure." Qin Feiyang made a shushing gesture and said in a low voice, "Ling Yunfei and I are going to Xingyue City. Don't tell anyone. If anyone asks, just say that I'm cultivating in the castle." "Why are you going to Xingyue City? Is there something good going on?" "Jiang Laoda, why didn't you bring Fat Lord along when there's something good? You're too disloyal." Lu Hong looked puzzled. Fatty's face was filled with dissatisfaction. "If I say it's suicide, will you still go?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Fatso and solemnly instructed, "Remember, no matter what happens, you're not allowed to leave the Martial Imperial Hall. In addition, You will spread the news tomorrow that mortals have priority when it comes to collecting pills in the future. For mortals. Fatso and Li Tianlan looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. Just do as I say. Also, change the distribution from once a month to once every 10 days. As for why I'm doing this, you'll know in the future. Qin Feiyang didn't explain much and asked, Has Manager Li delivered the image crystal? Not yet. That old thing is very treacherous. I heard from the martial arts hall's disciples that he only auctioned one supreme-grade red fire-colored glass elixir every day in order to raise the price. Fatso spoke in disdain. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, This is very normal. How much was the transaction price? Fatso thought for a moment and said 1 million on the first day, for million on the second day, for 2 million on the third day, for 3 million yesterday. Today's result is not out yet, but it should not be lower than 4 million. So little? Qin Feiyang frowned. In this way, 5 supreme-grade red fire-colored glass elixirs would only be slightly more than 20 million. Only 4 image crystals could be purchased. This is still considered little? Fatso and Li Tianlan were speechless. An ordinary red fire-colored glass elixir would be auctioned for around 1 million. It was 4 times more than that. What else did you want? Besides, for million gold coins, even the top clans in Yen City would feel the pinch for half a day. Don't look at me like that. Who doesn't want more money? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at the two and walked out of the pavilion. He came to Shi Zheng's downstairs and smiled. Elder, can I trouble you to make a trip to the treasure pavilion? Why are you going to the treasure pavilion? Shi Zheng was puzzled. Qin Feiyang laughed. Help me get the image crystals, a total of 4. The remaining gold coins will be your reward for your hard work. Shi Zheng hesitated for a moment and nodded. Okay, but you are not allowed to run around. Other than the Martial Imperial Palace, where else can I go? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Shi Zheng smiled, jumped down, and quickly left. Qin Feiyang was about to enter the house when Ling Yunfei ran over and asked, Are you ready? Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Now we only lack the image crystals. What about you? Have you found a shortcut? Ling Yunfei shook his head. There are no shortcuts. On the 4 walls, there are black armored guards of the royal family guarding. If we climb over the wall, we will definitely be intercepted, so we can only go out through the city gate. Open and above board. Qin Feiyang laughed bitterly. What are you going to do? Fatso came over and looked at the two sneakily. It has nothing to do with you. Mind your own business. Ling Yunfei glared at him, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I have also prepared the illusion pills. Let's just wait until midnight and find a chance to sneak out. Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and said helplessly, That's the only way now. More than 2 hours later, Shi Zheng finally returned. He took out 4 image crystals from his Qingquan bag and placed them on the tea table. Ling Yunfei, Fatso, and Lu Hong immediately surrounded him, their eyes flashing with a strange light. It was the first time they had seen the image crystals. Qin Feiyang was much calmer. He stood up and cupped his hands. Thank you, Elder. Shi Zheng smiled. It's nothing. Fatso laughed. Elder Shi, you must have received a large sum of money for your hard work, right? Can you share some with me? Hard work? Shi Zheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. He took out a piece of paper from his chest and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang took a closer look and his face turned green. It was actually another IOU. It said that today Jiang Haoyan owed the treasure pavilion 1 million gold coins. If he did not pay it off within a week, the interest would be 1,000 gold coins per day. At the bottom, there was Steward Li's signature. Why do I still owe him 1 million? Qin Feiyang looked at Shi Zheng with a puzzled face. Shi Zheng said, Your 5 supreme-grade red fire-colored glass pills were sold for a total of 21 million, and the Treasure Pavilion still has to take a commission. Look at my head. How could I forget about this? Qin Feiyang slapped the back of his head hard. As soon as he heard about the commission, he understood. The rule of the Treasure Pavilion was to take 1/10 of the commission. Out of the total price of 21 million, he would have to take a cut of 1 million. Then there was only 9 million left. The 4 image crystals were 20 million. After deducting 9 million, he naturally owed 1 million. Ling Yunfei and the other 2 were also a little stunned. It was right to take a commission, but they were all old acquaintances. Couldn't they take a little less? 1 million was enough for an ordinary person to live a carefree life for several lifetimes. He even wrote an IOU seriously and even had to calculate the interest when it was overdue. What a scam! Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed and said with a faint smile, he doesn't have the final say in the Treasure Pavilion. He is also doing things according to the rules. It's understandable. After that, he took out his Qinkuan bag, counted out 2 million gold coins, and handed it to Shizheng, saying with a smile, Elder, I have to trouble you to make another trip. You can use the extra 900,000 to buy some good wine. Shizheng said with a smile, How can I do that? Although he said so, he didn't seem to be polite and directly took it. What a joke! 900,000 gold coins, for a deacon elder like him, was a very rich guest. As soon as Shizheng left, Fatso complained, 900,000 gold coins at once. How generous! Why didn't you give the fat lord 900,000 gold coins? Fatso, you damn, the top-grade red fire colored glass pill you snatched is worth 4 million. What else do you want? Do you want me to give you all I have? Qin Feiyang said angrily. That's not necessary. Just give me 1 million to spend. Fatso smiled embarrassedly. Qin Feiyang was physically and mentally exhausted. Why were there so many top-grade goods around him? Do your job well. When I come back, you will be rewarded. Everyone has an image crystal. Drip your blood to recognize it as your master. Qin Feiyang took the lead and grabbed one. He bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. The image crystal immediately emitted a faint, bloody light. But soon the bloody light dissipated. Do I have one too? Lu Hong pointed at herself in disbelief. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He gave it to Lu Hong to make it easier to contact her. After all, Lu Hong was working for him now. Lu Hong was very excited. Even a martial arts genius like Feng Ling-er and a warlord like Shizheng didn't have an image crystal now. She actually had one. It was like a dream. After dripping their blood to recognize it as their master, the 4 of them dripped a drop of blood on each other's image crystal. In this way, a contract bridge was established. When they wanted to send a message to each other, they only needed to activate the image crystal and think about it. After putting the image crystal into the Qinkuan bag, Qin Feiyang looked at Ling Yunfei and said, There's no time to lose. Give me the illusion pill and we'll act immediately. Ling Yunfei was stunned and asked, Didn't we agree to wait until midnight? Qin Feiyang said, If we wait until midnight, I won't know how to send Shizheng away. Ling Yunfei suddenly said, So you gave him 900,000 to send him away. You're really cunning. Bullshit! I was just thanking him for taking care of me during this period. Qin Feiyang angrily glared at him. His words were righteous and magnanimous. Ling Yunfei and the other 2 rolled their eyes. If there were outsiders here, they would definitely sigh. Birds of a feather flocked together. They were all bad birds. After taking the illusion pill, Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei both turned into slightly stronger young men. Of course, Ling Yunfei's eye-catching sky-blue hair and eyes also turned black. How is it? After disguising themselves, the 2 of them looked at Fatso and Lu Hong and asked, After looking at the two of them carefully, Lu Hong looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Ling Yunfei is fine, but your linen clothes are too eye-catching. You have to change them. Linen clothes can blink. Qin Feiyang frowned. Why don't you go and take a look? Who in the Martial Imperial Hall is still wearing these street goods? Only you, the only one. Don't you think it's eye-catching? Lu Hong was a little helpless. You don't understand. Jiang Laoda is pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. To be precise, he is pretending to be cool. Fatso smiled evilly. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was very helpless. He had no choice but to ask Ling Yunfei for a disciple's clothes and put them on. That's about it. Lu Hong nodded. Then let's go. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.